Somebody once asked Donald Trump, how do you handle being at the center of all of this media attention, the whirlwind around you? How do you weather the storm? And he looked up and he said, I am the storm. I am the storm.
Are you gay?
What are you doing?
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
Do not come. Do not come. Do not come. Do not come.
You're fired.
Do not come. Do not come.
Shut up, bitch! I'm gonna go. I don't give a damn. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. Oh, look at my African American over here. Look at him. Are you the greatest? You know what I'm talking about? Okay. So we have.
All right, y'all, what's going on? What's going on? Let's just get right into it. No time to waste today. We got a Senate hearing today to listen to. Fauci being grilled by the Senate. I'm not exactly sure what they're going to be questioning him about, right? But they're going to be questioning him about lying in another committee hearing in the past. So we don't got time to waste. We got to jump right into it. There's some things I want to talk about right before it starts. Starts in about 15 minutes. So we got to touch on Seattle, right? Let's go to Seattle real quick. Now, how do we start this? The leadership in Seattle has blundered this mass shooting event, right? They've tried to turn this into a photo op, and now people are asking them, why was there such a huge delay? Why wasn't the police chief here? We saw the police chief lashing out at press yesterday, and he just basically is downplaying that and saying that that wasn't a big deal. Y'all are making this out to be a much bigger deal than it actually was. So let's get into it, man, because they're being grilled by the press, and they are doing a very, very bad response to it.
We also have new developments in the 5-hour delay for answers after Sunday's mass shooting at the Seattle Center. Yesterday, we told you an SPD spokesperson said they were waiting on dignitaries before holding a press conference late Sunday night.
Dignitaries.
Mayor Wilson denied that played any role in the delay, but now a source tells Fox 13 that SPD leadership was ready to go hours earlier until the mayor's office stepped in and stopped them. A source at the Seattle Police Department told Fox 13 officers wanted to hold a media briefing Sunday night to update the public, but Mayor Katie Wilson's office asked them to wait for dignitaries to arrive. Did anyone in your office tell SPD leadership that they could not hold that press conference between 7:45 and 8 p.m. Sunday night?
That is not my understanding, no.
Do you know if there's anyone else in your office that are making these calls without your knowledge?
That is not my understanding, no. So my understanding, which I shared yesterday, is that first of all, we had a lot of communication going back and forth between my office and SPD and our state and federal elected officials as we were trying to work together on the response to this incident.
When you have a mass shooting.
Hold on. And like I said, at Seattle Center, we had a scene of active investigation where the police were actively looking for suspects. And so my understanding is that we were told that it was not helpful to have me or other elected officials coming down to the scene while that active search was going on. And so we went.
Yeah, listen, this woman will lie to your face. She'll be stabbing you and saying that no, I'm not stabbing you. You know, that's the kind of woman she is. She's lying straight to your face and hoping you just believe it. They wanted to use a tragedy as a photo op, right? The police are over here saying we want to have a press conference right now, immediately, right? But you got the police chief off in Dallas, Texas. You got the mayor combing her hair for the first time in 20 weeks and trying to get ready to come out there. We got these other senators or representatives waking up, trying to cover up how drunk they are just so they can come out here and speak to the people while the people are out here suffering, getting shot, killed, while trying to have a family event. These people never let a good tragedy go to waste. And now they're going to lie to you about it right in your face? I can't believe y'all voted for this. Look at it.
Back and forth and eventually landed on an appropriate time to address the press and to share information.
The shooting.
Yeah, an appropriate time. Like what, 6 hours later while everyone's struggling. There was people, man, it's the incompetency of Seattle right now is out of control. You have children running the city into the ground.
Happened about 6 p.m. Sunday. It took nearly 5 hours until police and the mayor updated the public. Governor Ferguson and Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal both participated and offered thoughts and prayers. Our source tells us.
Oh, that woman is wasted. Look at she was in her third bottle of wine, ready to call it a day, watching her insider trading stocks skyrocket, right? And they said, hey, man, you got to come down here. She said, what? I got to do what now? Jesus. Yeah, look at that sleep paralysis demon. Imagine waking up to that. She married? Did y'all imagine that? You wake up in the morning. Oh, fuck. Oh, I couldn't imagine that, man. But anyways,
Mila Jayapal both participated and offered thoughts and prayers. Our source tells us
She got her eye on y'all.
briefings that night and wanted to get the first stream of information out hours before Sunday's press conference that started close to 11 Sunday night.
I think what makes it difficult to believe is because they have had significant training that we have heard about. They've paid tens of thousands of dollars to be trained by consultants. So they know exactly how to handle a situation like that.
Well, sir, I think you're a white supremacist. That's what her response probably is. She's probably churning that up in her head right now.
They have the information. They know when to put the information out. They know exactly how to do it. And they have certified, trained professional law enforcement who are well able to handle this without your attendance or anybody else. So how does this happen?
I just answered that question in my response. Thank you.
Well, that was reporter Dan Griffin who asked that last question you just heard. I also asked Wilson if the mayor's office has to sign off on SPD talking to media, especially during big events. She says there is no protocol like that. At the end of the presser, Wilson did say they will be reviewing the last few days to improve communication and called it, quote, a work in progress.
Yeah, because, you know, we've been a country for 250 years and we just still ain't got it together, y'all. It's just a work in progress. Now, we saw the police chief who, you know, doesn't even live in Seattle, lives in Chicago, right? His family primary residence is in Chicago. He just rents out an apartment over here in Seattle because he was assigned to be police chief, not elected, nothing like that, right? Well, he was in Dallas, Texas at the time, and people were asking him, how come you're not here? You know, we have a very populated event going on. Shouldn't the police chief be in the city? And he got pissed off. He lashed out at another journalist. And now he's over here downplaying it.
The viral video is fueling a new round of questions for Seattle Police Chief Sean Barnes. Fox 13's Lauren Donovan asked him directly about the exchange making headlines and the criticism that followed.
I have been here working as hard as I can for this city from the day I got here. You got that?
More than 1 million people have now watched this exchange between Seattle Police Chief Sean Barnes and a local reporter.
Let's go.
And after it took off online,
that's not cool, man. He's violently like trying to aggressively get in this journalist's face. That lets you know the mindset of this guy. He's probably racist against white people. Let's be honest.
I followed up.
Chief Barnes, can you address what exactly happened yesterday, that heated exchange following the press conference? What was that all about?
Yeah, I would describe it as a heated exchange, but that's okay. Listen, I respect our media. I respect what you do. I consider you.
You wouldn't consider it an exchange? I would consider it you aggressively bossing up on him. That's what I would consider it.
Following the press
By the way, who's that journalist?
conference, what was that all about?
Yeah, I would describe it as a heated exchange, but that's okay. Listen, I respect our media. I respect what you do. I consider you a big part of the community. I wish I could do it, but I don't have a face for television. But let me say this. I'm always...
Yeah, neither does the mayor.
What I do as a police officer. I'm always passionate about what I do as a community member, and sometimes that passion is in full display, especially if someone is questioning my work ethic or my integrity.
Now, do you want to just squash the discourse about, you not being in town enough? Because that seems like the origin of it.
Part of being a leader is being here, being visible, and being present. Part of being a leader in a major city is that sometimes I have obligations, and I wanted to be at the conference to support one of our community members who was getting an award.
The chief was out of town when the Seattle Center shooting happened. And
he wanted to be at the conference, but this dude was planned to come back in the middle of August. He was going to be gone for like 2 or 3 weeks on a girls' trip, on vacation, baby. Run it up, baby. He was going to be gone. Let me guess. It was going to be a 3-week ceremony to give this guy an award, huh? He's just lying to y'all. The mayor's lying to y'all. Police chief lying to y'all. Congressman Sleep Demon, she's lying to y'all.
This raises another question about how often he travels back to Chicago, where his family still lives.
Any reports that I'm gone every weekend are grossly misstated.
This chatter isn't new, dating back to when Barnes was police chief in Madison, Wisconsin. A 2021 newspaper report said his family was also living in Chicago then. But Tuesday, before cameras, Barnes said his focus remains here.
So,
why is he not the police chief of Chicago? Why do we have police chiefs that don't live in the area that they manage? And why does it happen to be the bluest states of hell or cities of hell? Madison, Wisconsin. We see what's going on over there right now, right? They're over there protesting, having a crazy week. They're going crazy over there. We know what's going on in Seattle. This is crazy, man. But this is what I love about Seattle. Their incompetency is getting them exposed, and now they've been exposed, all over the place. And I'm glad we're finally focusing in, because Mayor Wilson, Katie Wilson, I don't even want to call her a mayor. This crazy cat lady that is now managing this. Just look at her right here. Look at her. You see her face? That's the mayor, y'all. Looking like an ex-crackhead, like she lost all her teeth. And when she became mayor, they just kind of gave her some dentures. They don't quite fit. They're a little small, but she's working with it. But the incompetency coming out of the leadership in Seattle, I'm glad it's exposing them. They're finally getting caught with egg on their face. And there's a lot of times where the press has been trying to ask her questions, and her handlers have to say, no. No, you got no more questions. We're done. Okay. So we can't sit here and pretend that she's worthy of being mayor. She's so in and over her head. We have the billionaires with the biggest wealth generation in Washington fleeing Seattle. It's crazy. I feel like she's worse than Brandon Johnson and Mom Donnie, right? She's like, I want to be as bad as they are, but I'm going to do it better. I'm going to be bad worse. So I'm sorry, man. Seattle is in for a rough ride. Seattle, Chicago, New York City, y'all are in for a rough ride, man. So buckle up, because they ain't going nowhere. You're stuck with them for the next couple years. Is 2026 H1X okay? We caught a lefty this morning. I know they're believing everything that comes out of the Democrat plantation. They're believing everything that comes out of Massa's mouth from the plantation owners, but we're not going for it. But have fun in the chat. I'm not going to block you or nothing like that. You're good. Go ahead and have fun in the chat. Y'all just be nice, be chill. If she gets too out of control or shits her diaper, or if they get too out of control or shit their diaper, just give them some crayons and let them go play in the corner. Yeah, I don't like liars and misogynists. Yet you obviously support the Democrat Party. I don't know what I said that was misogynistic. Was it the crazy cat lady? Was it the crazy cat lady comment? Am I JD Vance now? These crazy cat lady, stupid bitches. Shit her diapers. Maybe I can call Trump's nurse. Maybe. Is it the same one that used to change Biden's diapers during the day? Every time he come out for a press conference. Do the Biden slump. When like a toddler's shitting in his pants, he's just kind of staring at you. I've been making misogynistic attacks since I started listening. Maybe you don't know big adult words. I don't. We're just a bunch of retards over here. So shout out to you. Have fun in the chat. Big shout out to Wounds Are Us over on Rumble. Woo-wee. Big super chat. She says, I just got my super chat button back. Good morning. Good morning to you. who is now the sponsor of the show. Anyone want to outdo Wounds R Us? Feel free. Anyone can donate $20 or more, and you will easily take over the sponsorship of the show. I just got one more thing to talk about before we get into more socialism. One more thing to talk about before we jump over to Fauci, which is about to begin. All right, well, let me see. Is Fauci already at the table? Okay, it's set to begin like right now. But I just want to talk about something real quick. 8 minutes. Let me take y'all for 8 minutes, all right? So Mamdani, being the good socialist he is, just doxed all the most wealthiest people in New York City. Gave everyone their addresses, all right? Let's get to it. Let's see what they're talking about when this situation unfolded.
New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani has published a searchable database of all New York properties that could be hit by the state's second home tax. It reveals full names and addresses, personal information. John Lonsky is here with me. Not only is he practically doxing wealthy New Yorkers, he's demonizing capitalism.
He's demonizing capitalism, and this also reminds us that socialism includes a loss of privacy. What it points towards is more government intervention, interference, and oversight of how you live. This is kind of scary. This isn't, I mean, you know, by publishing these names and addresses, he's telling the radical fringe, maybe you should go after these people. Maybe you should stand outside their apartment or home and protest. Yeah. I want to add something else that's
That's exactly what this is. This is a call to action. Not only a call to action, but it is an announcement that he is y'all's leader. He wants socialists, radical, crazy terrorist protesters to go and hunt down these billionaires. These are the people that fund the city. They fund the city. What happens when you get rid of them? What are y'all going to do? When you can't tax the rich when there ain't no rich to tax. This dude is trying to destroy New York City for Muslims. I mean, for some terrorist country. Like, what are we doing here? How could y'all allow yourselves to vote this guy in? You forgot 9/11 happened. Now we love Muslims, right? Even though they're over here stabbing people, running people, they're running LGBTQ people over, and y'all still say free Palestine. Y'all are waving Iraq flag or Iran flags at your protests. Y'all have lost y'all's mind. The left, it's not even a game anymore. Y'all have completely lost it, man. Lost the plot. You don't know what the fuck you're doing. And you are, when the country starts falling apart and crumbling, you guys will be at fault for it, not us. We did everything we could to patch all the holes, to stop the flooding, to do everything we could to fix it, and y'all demonized us for it. But when these cities crumble, Chicago, Seattle, New York City, LA, Portland, when they crumble, you guys will be to blame. All right, let's get back to it.
Very interesting. This is this morning's article in the New York Post. The idea here is they're targeting secondary residences or second homes, if you like, that are worth at least $1 million. Believe me, there are a lot of...
Hold on. Wait. Chicago's not crumbling? Chicago's not crumbling. See, now I know you just are intentionally being ignorant. You don't see the fact that businesses have left. You don't see that there's vacancies overrunning the city to the point where the tax like equation has to change now, because it used to be you could tax the business owners and the values of the properties in the city, but now there's no one paying them. The value of those vacant buildings is going down. That raises the taxes of all the homeowners in the poor areas. Last year, people's taxes almost doubled. Some of them almost tripled. They went up by 100%, 150%, and people were losing their homes in droves, having to sell their homes on pennies on the dollar for dirt cheap, just so they can get out of it, or just give it up to the bank, right? But It's a way to destroy the city, to remove ownership from the people. Like Mamdani, right? He wants to take people's properties. He wants to take their apartment buildings. He's trying to sue them because they're not up to code. And then he does this rent freeze. So now they can't even make profit in order to invest back into the building. Now the building is just there. They have to go work 2-3 jobs to pay for the building so these people can have cheap homes. And then the taxes are so insane too. Like, these people can't maintain these places for y'all to have your affordable housing. Oh, I'm hysterical. Okay, no, you're just retarded. That's all it is. I'm sorry. The left is just, there's something wrong with y'all. They installed y'all's brain upside down. It ain't functioning. It ain't working quite right. So I don't know what's wrong with you. I don't know. Whatever. Listen. It's okay. Somebody please change their diaper. Somebody, anybody, because they getting grumpy now.
Of $1 million properties in New York City, all 5 boroughs. When they first proposed this, there were only 31,000 residences that were targeted. But because of creeping socialism, that number, according to the New York Post, has gone up to 960,000. Residents and individuals, as a result, that are being targeted, that are being listed.
So there are 960,000 residents, the names of the owners, the address of that property, all worth approximately $1 million.
They think so.
And they put that out.
It's only $1 million? Fuck, man. You go to LA and like one of the average houses on a pretty big property, like a pretty decent sized house, is like worth $1 million. But we're supposed to punish them? Well, I'm sorry you're broke, but punishing people because they worked their asses off and became successful and bet it all on themselves and grew their wealth and everything like that ain't gonna fix nothing. Listen, socialism is just one step before communism. It's like giving a new coating, right, to a prison or something like that. It sucks on the inside once you finally get in there, but on the outside, it looks great. The lawn's kept, the garden is nice and tended to. It's got a nice coat of paint. Everything looks great. But when you are a criminal and you are in it and you have been brought into it, the toilets don't work. You know, you got some dude over there smearing his shit all over the wall. It smells. They don't maintain nothing. It is what it is, right? Now, it's better than the ICE detention centers. I mean, it's ICE detention. Oh, no, I'm a lefty now. Now, it's not as good as the ICE detention centers, which, you know, the ICE detention centers look great, even though they call those the concentration camps. The detention centers are fantastic compared to what American citizens got to go through in our local jails. But either way, like, once you're in communism, it's a wrap. They control everything you do. They make sure your life can't go anywhere. You and everybody else are just carbon copies of each other. But you leftists, man, y'all sit here and that's what y'all advocate for. Y'all want your individuality ripped from you when y'all are the people that say, don't judge me. Let me be who I want to be. Well, what happens when socialism sets in? When you're not allowed to be yourself, when you're not allowed to use your skills to achieve more than the guy who just sits on the couch over there? What happens? You're stuck. You have been controlled. You've been bought into this system that owns you now because you just didn't want to fucking go to work. And that's why these people want socialism so bad, because they just don't want to work. So they'd rather everybody suffer because they're lazy and stupid. So that's socialism in a nutshell. Mamdani is over here doxing people, which has to be illegal, right? But anybody that has $1 million home, hell, man, my grandpa, he wasn't no rich guy, but he was well off. He worked his ass off, and his home was nearly $1 million in Dallas, Texas. On today's market, anyways. When he bought it, it was much cheaper, but on today's market, it could sell for well over $1 million. And they're looking at selling it right now for that much. But it's not like he was super rich. He was just a normal dude that retired and worked 3 jobs and retired for multiple jobs and went to the Air Force and retired from the Air Force. Like, he wasn't no super rich guy, and he was a Democrat. So none of it makes sense, man. The left just simply does not make sense. But anyways, now that we got those stories out of the way, let's jump over here to this Senate hearing. We got, Rand Paul, huh? Let me get to these super chats too.
And the Chinese scientist Xi Zhengli published NIAID-supported research.
We only missed like 5 minutes. Let's go back. Prairie Skies, thank you for the $20. He said, good morning, this is my favorite show. All right. Thank you. I appreciate the $20 over here on YouTube. And Jeffrey, thank you for the happy poop. All right, y'all. Here we go, man. Let's get it.
1 million Americans died from COVID-19. Some estimate as many as 15 million people died worldwide from COVID-19. Publicly, Anthony Fauci promoted the theory that the virus arose naturally, while privately, he was well aware of a mountain of evidence suggesting the virus originated in the lab. The American people deserve answers. The American people deserve to know why dangerous research was funded by NIAID in a totalitarian country, in a lab that lacked acceptable safety standards. The decision to fund dangerous gain-of-function research in Wuhan, China, will likely go down in history as perhaps one of the worst public health decisions. Frankly, the American people deserve an apology. I hope today Dr. Fauci will come clean, admit it was a mistake to fund dangerous research in China, admit that the risk of this dangerous research exceeded any possible benefits, ask forgiveness, and pledge to help our government devise safeguards so a man-made epidemic never happens again. Instead of an apology, you have for years avoided responsibility. Regarding the lockdowns, you argue that you did not personally issue every lockdown order, close every school, or impose every mandate. But officials across the country invoked your authority to justify these decisions. And you presented your recommendations not as judgments open to debate, but as dictates of science itself. Your own words demonstrate that you understood the influence you exercised. On March 14th, 2020, you wrote that the task force recommendations were driven by me, yourself, Deb, and CDC. The next day, you wrote that you had convinced Mayor Bill de Blasio to close the New York City schools, so you were involved. That same night, Governor Gavin Newsom's chief of staff told you that the governor had decided to close California schools, bars, and restaurants after watching you on television.
Hey, man, y'all hit the like button.
Governors, mayors, school boards, corporations, and Congress all bear responsibility for the decisions they made. The COVID lockdown, however, could never have been inflicted without you aiding and abetting the crime. Children lost years of education. Small businesses built over a lifetime disappeared. Patients delayed cancer screenings and other medical care. Families were separated from dying relatives. Workers were ordered to accept a medical procedure or lose their jobs. Worship assembly, employment, education, and travel were restricted in the name of science. While you did not impose every restriction, you used your public authority to justify them. While you concluded publicly that COVID occurred naturally, your private record tells a different story. In early 2020, your hand-picked virologist warned that the virus appeared to have been manipulated in the lab. In a conference call concerning the origin of the virus, all but two of the participants believed deliberate insertion was possible. Your concern was not merely theoretical. That same week, you led an urgent effort to determine whether your own agency had funded the research related to these experiments that were now under suspicion. Hours later, your assistant reported that the Wuhan experiments had indeed been reviewed and approved by the NIH. Those were not the actions of officials who believed that a research-related origin was an absurd conspiracy theory. They were the actions of officials urgently trying to determine whether their agency funding was connected to the research under discussion, connected to the pandemic. You could not hide that your agency had funded the Wuhan research or your long history of defending gain-of-function research. The only alternative left was to argue that COVID-19 did not originate in the Wuhan lab. You were not a detached observer. You had an institutional interest in the public believing that federally funded research had nothing to do with the pandemic. It was a conflict of interest from the very beginning. The authors of the proximal origin of SARS-CoV-2 privately had serious doubts about a natural origin. Within days, though, they flipped, and they all wrote in proximal origin that the virus was almost certainly not a laboratory construct. That paper was then used by the government and the media and you to discredit Americans who were asking the same questions that you and the authors were asking yourselves privately. You even cited proximal origin from the White House podium. You held it out as evidence that the virus could not have been engineered, but you didn't disclose your role in the discussions that preceded the writing of the paper. You did not disclose the author's original concerns. You did not reveal that you had been part of the paper, that you had read and offered editorial comments on the paper before it was published, before you began using it as evidence that it couldn't have originated in the lab. You did not disclose that you had immediately investigated yourself whether NIAID funding might be connected to the research. You did not tell the American people the full story. Duly released private messages indicate that the doubts with the authors and others didn't disappear after the publication. So while this was being waved at the White House to show that it couldn't come from the lab, the authors were still privately continuing to assign a meaningful probability to a laboratory origin, one thing in public and another in private. Some of the same scientists discussed avoiding email and carefully managing communications that might eventually be obtained under the Freedom of Information Act. The pattern is straightforward. Privately, there was alarm, then an immediate inquiry to see if NIAID's possible exposure to funding, then a rapid public declaration of certainty, continued private doubt, and then years of resistance to disclosure. The question is why? The only logical answer is that your primary concern was avoiding culpability. Your primary concern was hiding the fact that you had approved the funding for this dangerous research. Your support of gain-of-function research is extensive and long-standing. In 2011, your agency funded Ron Fauci's laboratory when it mutated the avian flu until it could spread through the air between mammals. This was the tipping point. This is when others became worried. You funded this. You advocated for this. The federal government's own biosecurity board, though, recommended withholding the details of these experiments because of the danger the research posed. People were concerned that publishing it was publishing a roadmap to creating bioweapons around the world. But you sided with the gain-of-function scientist Fauci and argued that the benefits of publishing the research far outweighed the risks. You defended this avian flu transmissibility experiments as critical research. You wrote that even if a scientist became infected and triggered a pandemic, the benefits of the gain-of-function experiments outweighed the risk. In 2014, your agency, NIAID, began funding the Wuhan bat coronavirus work. In 2015, Ralph Barrick and the Chinese scientist Shi Zhengli published NIAID-supported research combining a bat coronavirus spike protein with a SARS backbone. The resulting virus could infect human airway cells. It's a novel virus that now can infect human cells. It gained transmissibility, it gained function. In 2018, the same group of scientists, EcoHealth, Barrick, Shi, and their collaborators submitted the Diffuse proposal, which involved the insertion of a furin cleavage site into the coronavirus. DARPA rejected it as too dangerous. When COVID was sequenced, though, early on in January of 2020, within days, scientists discovered—
Thank you, April, for the membership.
It had a novel furin cleavage site, just as had been proposed in the Diffuse project. This was either an extraordinary coincidence or a smoking gun, evidence that the Chinese had created COVID-19. It made the laboratory origin question more legitimate, and it made your categorical public denials indefensible. On May 11th, 2021, you told the Senate, the NIH has never, ever, and does not now fund gain-of-function research in Wuhan, in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. When I gave you the opportunity to correct the record, to reconsider the statement, you responded that you had never before lied to Congress. We were then told that only the government's narrowest regulation of definition counted here, that you could define gain of function in one way in which this wasn't gain of function, in which all of the common sense of the world would be thrown out, all of the idea that the mice were dying and the virus was more transmissible didn't matter because you had a technical definition that allowed you to fund.
I'm just going to jump to live.
Biological threats. Those are the kinds of forward-looking, life-saving questions that will help our nation be better prepared to protect the health and the safety of Americans when the next emergency occurs. Unfortunately, at this precise moment, we should be strengthening our capabilities. The Trump administration seems to be doing everything in their power to actually weaken our capabilities. The administration has hollowed out the public health workforce. They have fired, pushed out, and cut funding for public health personnel, shrinking the CDC workforce by a quarter. Thousands of experienced scientists have left government service, and with them has gone critical institutional knowledge that cannot be easily replaced, certainly not quickly replaced. The administration, thanks to political operatives like Russell Vought, has slashed or illegally withheld funding for life-saving medicines and cutting-edge technologies that let us rapidly develop them during an emergency. Mr. Vought is now further politicizing the federal grant-making process, proposing to subject all federal grants, including those for disaster relief, housing development, and cancer research, to the whims of political appointees, not nonpartisan experts. All of this has left the American people more vulnerable to infectious disease threats, and we are already tragically seeing the consequences. Staffing and funding cuts have slowed the federal, state, and local response to ongoing outbreak of a foodborne parasite, which has sickened thousands in my home state of Michigan, as well as across the country. At the same time, the administration—
Yeah, it has nothing to do with, millions of illegals flooding into the country. It has nothing to do with that.
Our ability to contain dangerous diseases like Ebola before they spread.
Nothing to do with Chinese people coming here with viruses.
Agencies have the personnel,
man-made shit in labs
to effectively prevent, detect, and respond to these threats. We should
Has nothing to do with that.
Strengthen our biodefense efforts to deter our adversaries and prevent biological attacks against our country, and how our government can better coordinate and communicate during public health emergencies. These are the kinds of forward-looking matters that are worthy of this committee's time. Instead, we are here continuing the chairman's year-long focus on one individual.
Yeah, Fauci is there.
History tells us, unfortunately, another pandemic is all but inevitable. The question is whether Congress and this committee will work to better prepare our country for it, or continue looking backward while our public health infrastructure crumbles around us. That is the hearing that we should be having today. Unfortunately,
we're going to have a pandemic in like 60 years, and they're going to blame it on Trump.
Purely partisan agenda, and it will not make Americans safer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We do got a pandemic. It's a TDS pandemic.
The committee has denied access to the minority to records is categorically false. This is the most transparent investigation in the history of Congress. We actually created a website, and we put all of the information on the website. It continues to operate. The reason it hasn't been accessed is no Democrat ever signed up for it. Not one Democrat. We told them the access. They never asked for the access code. They haven't been on the website because they have not cared about the investigation. It's a practice of this committee.
I'm sorry. I'm distracted by the little bunny hopping around in my yard right now.
Do you swear that the testimony—
It's a beautiful morning out there, man.
The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. Dr. Anthony Fauci, you are recognized for 5 minutes for your opening statement.
Here we go.
Peters.
Shells, thank you for the Unc Alert.
I served at the NIH for over 54 years, 38 of those as director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases.
Deep state.
Over that period, I proved that I believe in and respect the value of legitimate congressional oversight. In fact, I testified before and/or briefed Senate and House Senate and House committees well over 200 times over those 38 years. During and after the COVID pandemic, I have appeared multiple times for hearings in the Senate and the House, usually under oath, and sat for several days-long transcribed sworn interviews, answering questions about the very issues that are now the subject of this hearing. However, given Senator Paul's obvious obsession with calling for my prosecution, his repeated slanderous comments about me, and recently his publicly releasing my unredacted personal diary aimed at
not his diary,
and intimidating me, the only conclusion I can reach is that the sole reason he is calling me before this committee is to get me to say something, anything, that could vindicate his repeated public pledges that I end up, in his words, quote, behind bars, unquote. Any reasonable
Well, just tell the truth and you'll be fine, right?
was followed, his unhinged obsession with me would readily come to the same conclusion. Therefore, although it pains me to do so, because of the respect I have for the legislative branch of government and my decades-long record of cooperating with Congress, under the advice of my attorneys, I will invoke my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution to refrain from answering your questions. Thank you.
I told y'all, he's going to plead the fifth.
Begin a round of questioning. Dr. Fauci, your testimony today is compelled by a lawful subpoena. As you know, it's a crime under 18 U.S.C. Section 1001 to knowingly make a material false statement to Congress, with a penalty up to 5 years of imprisonment. Understanding that you are under oath, the American people would like to understand your reasoning, your rationale for why you chose to fund the research in Wuhan. There have been, intelligence agencies, the CIA, the FBI, the DOE, have all come to the conclusion that more likely than not, the virus came from the lab in Wuhan. And so we'd like to know, what was the rationale? What was the discussion? How, what went behind the decision to fund the research in Wuhan? How did you come to the conclusion that a totalitarian country would be capable of doing this in a BSL-2 lab, a lab that lacked the security? What was the reasoning? And are you sorry, basically, for making the decision? Would you, given another chance, say, well, gosh, circumstances now, as I know it, maybe it wasn't a wise thing. Can you explain to the committee why you chose to fund this dangerous research in China?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
In the red folder on your table is a copy of Section 192 of Title II of the U.S. Code. Your counsel has been provided a copy as well. That section makes it a crime for a witness appearing under subpoena to refuse to answer any questions pertinent to the question under inquiry. Do you have that in front of you?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
Let the record record that the witness has refused to answer whether there's a folder in front of him based on his Fifth Amendment right. It is true that you're appearing under direction of our subpoena to provide testimony on matters under consideration by the committee, including the origins of COVID-19, risky life sciences research, and your tenure as a federal government employee. Additionally, you've been provided a full and unconditional pardon dated January 19th, 2025, for any offenses against the United States which may have been committed or taken part from January 1st, 2014 through the date of the pardon for a 10-year period, arising from or in any manner related to your service as director of the National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Diseases, as a member of the White House Coronavirus Task Force, or the White House COVID-19 response team, or as chief medical advisor to the president. Have you refused this pardon, or do you have any reason to believe this full and unconditional pardon, this grant of immunity, would somehow require you to plead the Fifth Amendment?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
Based on the facts presented, I'm going to direct you to answer the questions. The committee has issued a valid subpoena.
Might as well go back to sleep, y'all.
The question
might as well go right back to sleep.
To your decision-making as head of NIAID, as well as a chief.
Wounds are us. Thank you for the $5. Fauci has been killing people since the early 80s. Ask the folks' families who died because of drug regimes he concocted. As a healthcare provider, I was there. Thank you for the 5. Wounds are us. And Mandible, thank you for the $5. Such a waste of time. He's not going to answer shit. Nope.
Dr. Fauci, were you ever made aware of gain-of-function research on monkeypox being conducted at the National Biodefense Analysis and Countermeasure Center and back at Fort Detrick?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the.
I don't even know if I want to watch this now.
Dr. Fauci, did the CIA ever transfer funds to NIH under an interagency agreement?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
I'm going to, but I need the long list of the gain-of-function questions. Dr. Fauci, did the NIH ever conduct research for or in coordination with any element of the intelligence community, CIA, ODNI?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
The reason why these
I'm
questions,
going to go mow my lawn. Y'all have fun.
you know, President Trump has.
I was supposed to do that yesterday.
We're glad that he did a ban on gain-of-function research, so we're better off than we were when we had an advocate serving as head of NIAID, an advocate for gain-of-function research. There is still, though, a question, though, whether or not the intelligence community is adhering to that order. There's a question of whether or not gain-of-function research is still ongoing. And these are important questions the American people.
What's that bunny doing outside?
Dr. Fauci, have you been read into any
I think the bunny's gone now.
Homeland Security program, any prospective special access program concerning gain-of-function research?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer.
But he was just hopping around.
Under the Fifth Amendment.
Hopping around, eating grass.
When we look at the research in China, the gain-of-function research that you've denied was gain-of-function, one of the things that startled the scientists when they saw COVID in the first couple of weeks was when they looked at the sequence of it, they said, oh my God, there's a furin cleavage site in it. And in this particular family of coronaviruses, the sarbecoviruses, they'd never seen this before. They were also startled to look at it and see how it was coded for, what the codons were, and to discover that the codons used out of 36 different possibilities turned out to be the one that was commonly used in gene manipulation by scientists. Dr. Fauci, were the scientists at the Wuhan Institute of Virology capable of inserting a furin cleavage site into a coronavirus?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
So one of the experiments that was pretty common was they would take the backbone of a SARS virus, and this would be a SARS virus that the backbone itself wasn't that dangerous, but then they would dig through guano, 300 feet underground, bat guano. They'd find other viruses, unknown viruses. They'd take the S protein off of an unknown virus and stick it on a backbone. And then they would infect mice that have humanized cells. And they were trying to discover if they could create a virus that infects humans. Now, many people would say, well, gosh, that doesn't sound like a really good idea to create viruses that don't exist in nature to see if they'll infect human cells. What if one escaped? What if you keep infecting this and do serial passage, you actually adapt the virus to be infectious to humans? So the question is whether or not Dr. Fauci, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, was combining an S protein with one virus with the backbone of others, and could this lead to a virus, maybe it wasn't even predicted, but could it lead to viruses that gained in function and then could lead to a pandemic?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer.
This is so dumb.
Rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
One of the arguments that you and others have made against this virus coming from the lab is it couldn't have come from the viruses that have been published. And nobody's really arguing that. I think from the very beginning, people acknowledged that the viruses that have been published are too far evolutionarily distant from a virus that could have become COVID-19. But what has never been acknowledged by the side who tries to call the other side of conspiracy theory, which is really something you don't usually see in a scientific debate. This is the first time I've ever seen an article printed in Lancet by your friends.
Ask Free Lee, thank you for the happy.
These are the kind of things you see as a screen on a political, website. You don't really see this in science. But when they release this as being a conspiracy theory, we're wondering that when you do this, when you combine these viruses and are able to grow them in humanized cells, whether or not this kind of risky research, whether you call it gain of function or not, whether you use the definition of gain of function, whether this kind of research should have had more scrutiny. I think in your House testimony, you testified that you never traveled to China and that you were unaware that anybody at NIH ever examine the labs.
What about if Democrats ask him?
You said that even recently.
Questions. You think he's going to answer those or still plead the fifth?
The Chinese scientists.
Are they even going to ask him questions?
Is that even in our country, we trust our scientists. They're good American scientists, probably doing the right thing for America. But at the same time, we oversight to make sure it's not dangerous research, but we also investigate the lab. I believe Fort Detrick was one of our main labs was closed down in the last year or two because of research institute, a research incident that was dangerous with dangerous pathogens. And so the American people would want to know, how could you approve this dangerous research in China, say that you trusted the Chinese scientists, and then in the end, you had to admit that you'd never been there, and none of your inspectors had ever been there. Dr. Fauci, had any of the labs where this dangerous research was occurring, were any American lab oversight or lab investigators, did they ever appear in these labs to make sure that they were safe labs?
I plead the fifth.
Counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
So one of the main theories for those who have looked at this being created in the lab was the idea that could have come from a virus not previously published. Dr. Fauci, are you aware that she, who worked for the Wuhan Institute of Virology, was said to, and I think in her own words, to have over 100 viruses that had not been previously published that could have been a close enough relative to create COVID-19? Are you aware of that?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Under your testimony previously, when you denied ever having funded gain of function in China, it was so adamant as to be striking, to leave no room for any interpretation of what is or isn't gain of function research. But there's another important question. Did you fund gain of function research in other biolabs around the world?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
The one research project that we do know you did fund is the one that Ron Fauci did. And it's important to talk about because this sort of was the beginning of the debate over gain of function. And this wasn't just me. I wasn't even aware of the debate 10 years ago. This was other scientists. Over 200 scientists at the Cambridge Working Group signed a protest because they didn't think you should fund the research, and they didn't think it should even be published because it was sort of a roadmap as to how to make a bioweapon. So what they did was the avian flu, and this is important. It may be the most important question we get to here today. The avian flu has about 50% mortality.
Don't matter. He's not going to answer it.
The good news, though, about animal viruses is they don't infect humans very well. It will infect humans, but doesn't go human to human very well. Ron Fauci, with the money that you provided to him, did an experiment where he caused purposeful mutations to create a new virus, an avian flu that didn't just infect birds well, but actually infected mammals well, went ferret to ferret in an aerosolized manner. People saw this and were aghast, at the decision-making process that you decided to fund this. But this is when, the debate came about, and you wrote in support of this in the Washington Post, and you said, even if a scientist is bitten, even if a pandemic should occur, the knowledge is worth the risks. Do you still stand by that? Would you like to qualify at all whether or not the knowledge of gain of function is worth the risks, particularly in this case, since we now know 15 million people died worldwide? Many people believe this came from the lab. Do you think that the risks really are worth the benefits for gain of function research?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
All right. We're going to finish with this question, and it's based really on that statement, that general statement in your support for gain of function, the idea that the benefits outweigh the risks. So there are many other people who disagree, and they aren't politicians or not. I don't know what party they're in. David Relman is probably one of the most esteemed, and he is a scientist at Stanford. He, I think, has classified clearance. He's been a consultant to our government probably for a decade or more. And he's written about this publicly. He says the opposite.
How long does Rand Paul have to talk?
Do not.
Isn't other senators going to ask questions?
Richard Ebright, who's been involved in this debate for 2 decades, says the same thing. Says we really shouldn't be doing this at all. There's a quote also by Kevin S.
Hey, y'all wanted to watch this. Y'all said y'all wanted to watch this. I told y'all what was going to happen. So we're going to sit here. I'm going to run it up. I want to make at least $5 off of ad revenue here.
About this gain of function, I implore every scientist, funder, and nation working in the field.
I'm good.
Stop.
I'm gonna sit right here and plead the fifth too.
Viruses.
I'm gonna go steal my wife's office chair. It's a lot better than mine.
Plagues. Dr. Fauci, would you like to at least?
I got her the good one. I got me the.
And let us know whether or not you've
got me the cheap one.
On whether or not the benefits of gain of function research outweigh the risks.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
The chairman has denied your assertion.
Is it true that you are a Jew?
But you nonetheless refuse and stand on privilege despite the existence of the pardon. The committee will have to consider after this hearing what appropriate action should be taken against you for the failure to testify after being directed to do so. It's against the law to obstruct an investigation of Congress. There will be repercussions to your refusal to testify today. Senator Peters.
Right, now it's going to be ass kissing.
You're not recognized. If you are unruly, you will be removed from the proceeding. You are not recognized, and you are not recognized, sir. Sir, you are not recognized.
Who's talking?
Recognized. Security. We'll hold off. But you will respect these proceedings. You were told not to sit at the table. You insist on sitting at the table, and we told you would not be recognized. You are not invited here for testimony, sir. You are being disruptive. Would you behave this way in a courtroom? No, because the judge would put you in jail. I can't do that today, but I can have you escorted from the premises. So I would say, sir, sit quietly and don't say another word. I said, sit quietly. You are not recognized.
Bailiff, get him out of here. Hold his ass in contempt.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to hear.
I want to see who that was.
He is not recognized by the committee or the chair. If he speaks again, he will be removed from the room. This testimony is from Anthony Fauci. This is not a game with his lawyers. He can advise, his lawyers can give him advice. He's got a half dozen here. They're all allowed to talk to him.
Yeah.
So, look, this is the way Anthony Fauci wants to be remembered. For a lawyer not listening to the rules. That's the way you want to be remembered, and that's what you're going to do. You are not recognized, sir. Security, please remove him from the room.
Escort him out the fucking premises. Deport his ass. Getting frosty in this bitch. I like that they all clapped. Hear, 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 hear. And I has to take the walk of shame.
Let the record state that Dr. Fauci will still have the advice of the other half a dozen attorneys that he brought.
I know that's Laura. I know that's Laura Ingraham just by her shoulders. Just by this little scoop of hair and them shoulders, I know that's Laura Ingraham right there.
Have the advice of the other half a dozen attorneys that he brought along today. Senator Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Take his cheat sheet away too. All it says, plead the fifth.
First, or the last public health crisis to impact our nation. In December 2023, and our federal agencies still haven't fully pinned down the source of that outbreak. Measles cases in this country are at the highest they've been in 35 years. More children are getting sick and even hospitalized from this preventable disease.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the millions of illegals that fled into the country, brought God knows what with them.
And we don't know how widespread this crisis actually is. We have a hantavirus scare on a cruise ship, and though it hasn't made headlines in the way that the screwworm threatening our food security has, I remain concerned
the screwworm.
about bird flu that is also spreading and could one day cause a pandemic. This is also something this committee should be investigating and holding hearings on. Since January 2025, the Trump administration has taken a number of actions to drastically weaken our ability to fight infectious diseases and biological threats that endanger Americans. These actions are both incomprehensible and are also inexcusable. They include slashing funding for public health and infectious disease research, canceling contracts for cutting-edge vaccine technology, shutting agencies responsible for tackling infectious diseases around the world, firing thousands of federal employees with keeping our communities and our medicines and our food supply safe, and injecting political appointees in what should be non-political grant-making functions. That is something this committee should be looking at. I could go on. I could go on all the topics that we need to be looking at moving forward to protect this country. We're not doing that in this committee. That's what this committee was designed to do. It's what it has done throughout history. It has done it in a bipartisan way. We should get back to that and think about the future of this country and keeping this country safe. When a crisis like COVID-19 strikes, we have an obligation to examine what went right and what went wrong to provide accountability for the American people. Congress certainly has done that. Between the House and Senate, nearly 20 different committees, including this committee, as I mentioned, have conducted oversight of the COVID-19 pandemic, conducting transcribed interviews, holding dozens of hearings, and released more than 10 reports. Today's exercise, unfortunately, is a stark departure from those largely bipartisan, legitimate efforts. The chairman has shut the minority out of participating equally in these efforts, withheld information, selectively released documents, actions that completely undermine the credibility of this investigation. I will enter a record without objection, Mr. Chairman, a letter that I sent to
By the way, why did he need an attorney there if all he's going to do is plead the fifth?
Shut out.
Without objection.
We'll provide other details as well.
That attorney is getting a free payday, baby.
I think today's hearing, unfortunately, does real damage. It's tempting to turn one person into the scapegoat for a crisis that hundreds of officials across both the Trump and the Biden administration were responsible for handling. And it does so in a way that people that are facing death threats. This is only going to unfortunately deter
If I see that bunny again, I'm going to take a picture of it.
service to understand that this is what they would have to go through as they provide their advice to us. We're not going to make our nation safer, and I hope that we can restore by doing these kinds of activities. And I hope that we can.
I need to clean my window, man.
Legitimate.
Got little fingerprints from my son.
In our public health and pandemic preparedness and other homeland priorities. That's what this committee needs to focus on. It hasn't the last year and a half. Let's hope it does.
I ain't focused. I'm checked out.
Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Fauci, I hope the American people listen very carefully to Chairman Paul's opening.
Like, y'all watching this, I'm trying to figure out.
I think it's just.
I'm trying to figure out who this reporter was. Hold up, wait a minute.
You've taken that have been so destructive.
You know, they set up this camera angle for a reason.
I certainly understand.
Fox 13, huh?
Why you needed a pardon. I certainly understand why, on the advice of counsel, you're not answering any questions, because I think it'd be almost impossible for you to answer the questions truthfully without really demonstrating what you did, your culpability, self-incriminating. We have, all of us has prepared a lot. I've been deluged with questions.
Deluged.
Asked Dr. Anthony Fauci. There are so many legitimate questions that deserve answers, and now you're not willing to provide those answers. So with my limited time, I'm going to talk about things that my investigation have revealed that have not been adequately answered and, quite honestly, haven't been adequately covered by the legacy media. I'll kind of combine the questions into kind of one, but you know, I certainly, let's put up the last COVID chart. I was warned pretty early on about the dangers of the experimental gene therapy that you've called a vaccine, but it really falls under the definition of gene therapy. So I was going to ask you, I mean, were you carefully monitoring the safety surveillance systems like VAERS and vSafe that literally were deluged with complaints? You know, currently, worldwide, there have been almost 1.7 million adverse events reported to the VAERS system. Of those, over 39,000 were deaths. And of those deaths, 24% occur on the day of vaccination within 1 or 2 days. 24%, which, by the way, just happens to be the same percentage that a Rasmussen poll pointed out the American public believe 24% of the American public believe they know somebody who died of the experimental gene therapy. So again, I was certainly interested in asking you whether or not you were following this as carefully as I was. It's not my responsibility to follow safety surveillance systems, but I did. And by the way, when I published, this is actual government information. When I published it and people had me on their shows, they would be censored by Facebook. They would be deplatformed. I think largely at the behest of the actions you took to make sure that disinformation wasn't spread. This wasn't disinformation. This was the truth. So I was going to ask you whether you knew Dr. Marks. I think you do know him. He's the head of CBER. He's the man who is in charge of approving vaccines and surveilling for the safety. My investigation shows that on March 1st of 2021, less than 3 months after the emergency use authorizations, he was warned by Dr. Anna Scharsman, data mining expert, that the algorithm they were using to analyze VAERS data was going to hide in mass safety signals. 26 days later and 3 months consecutively after that, they did data runs with a new algorithm that unmasked those safety signals. They showed dozens of safety signals, including sudden cardiac death, cerebral artery occlusion, basal ganglia stroke, agonal rhythm, Bell's palsy, and pulmonary infarction. Your diaries now show that you actually suffered pulmonary infarction in, I think, probably June 2021. I was just wondering I was just wondering whether it ever went through your mind that maybe that injection, all those boosters you took, might have caused that. You know, and the question I was going to, and I'll ask this question, were you ever made aware of the fact that Peter Marks was warned that their algorithm was going to hide the safety signals? And were you told that senior FDA officials were given shown dozens of safety signals associated with the COVID injection?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Next area I want to go through is
I'm sorry, did he plead the fifth again?
March 2021. An employee at NIH, Dr. Nath, led a team of researchers who were diagnosing and treating individuals who'd never had COVID or were severely injured by the genetic therapy injections. Dr. Nath told those individuals, stay quiet. You know, we want to make sure that we gather all the information and then release it to doctors so they can treat people like yourself. There was a concerted effort, and I'll enter this into the record. It appears inside NIH to quash Dr. Nath's publishing of that study. It finally was put on a preprint server with telling no one, I think about May of 2022. I think what's noteworthy about this is Dr. Nath told the injured participants that early treatment, early intervention was crucial for them to be treated. And yet within the NIH, they were questioning what was Dr. Nath doing.
Danny Cat, thank you for the $2. Said he should have it. He should have that memorized by now.
I want to take time searching for it because publishing it would create vaccine hesitancy.
I'm sure he's not even listening to the questions.
Time and time again is the reason they didn't promote they lied about the safety signals they were seeing. Throughout the pandemic, I always pushed early treatment. We've got things in here where you were.
Holy, I'm sorry to hear that, brother.
Remdesivir because it was untested, but hydroxychloroquine, yeah, it was an approved drug. Maybe some safety issues, but we had a great deal of experience with it. All of a sudden, you had the Surgisphere study. It was retracted within 2 weeks because it was completely false. Totally blew up the use of hydroxychloroquine. And then when it comes to ivermectin, which, by the way, because I was contacted by so many people, I referred them to doctors who actually had the courage and compassion to treat vaccine-injured individuals. It works. But I was going to ask you whether you were involved in the FDA attack.
Isn't that stuff that Joe Rogan was talking about?
You had a
cattle dewormer
interview on CNN on August 29th.
Horse dewormer
Of 2021, where again, I just don't want to take time to find the exact quote, but said there's no evidence that ivermectin is helpful. On that exact same day, and I've got the studies right here. There was a website that was tracking the random controlled studies. Here they are, showing 60, 70% efficacy of ivermectin. The same day you say there's no evidence, there was all kinds of evidence. Loved ones had to.
Will it get the vaccine out of me? That's what I want to know.
Would you try it? So I would want to know, to what extent were you involved in sabotage?
Chair's so squeaky.
Ivermectin, and did you do that because you knew the only way you get an emergency use authorization for these drugs, these experimental gene therapy, was if there was no effective treatment, you couldn't get the emergency use authorization. So is that why you helped sabotage these cheap generic drugs in favor of remdesivir, which, by the way, nurses, are you aware of the fact that nurses called it run, death is near?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
But let me end on this note because this just came to light. We've got 11 million pages of documents. We also have other people who were in the room. But Now you actually lied to your own diary. On March 27, 2020, you wrote in your diary, "To my surprise yesterday, the POTUS sent a letter to governors outlining a plan to reopen county by county while monitoring the spread of virus in the low-risk counties. This was half-baked and never shown to Deb or I before it was sent out." So we have evidence that, in fact, you were fully aware of it and certainly approved, if not authored it. So I was just simply asking you, I mean, is that true? I mean, did you literally lie to your own diary? Did you know of that letter sent out to governors about
WD-40 is a degreaser. I need a lithium greaser,
the witness,
which I do have. I just don't want to go get it.
On the
I'll plead the Fifth.
Council, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Harrison.
Thank you. Dr. Fauci.
One last question. Are you a Jew?
Thanking you for more than 50 years of service to this country at the National Institutes of Health. And it is unfortunate that you have been put in the position that you are in today. And it must be
Oh, God. Just get under the table and blow this guy already.
To entrap you. It must
At least that'd be entertaining.
For your attorneys to hear the chair's mischaracterization of the legal issues and posture that impact your decisions at the witness table today.
Sure, why not? Well, let's put that poll up.
I was going to ask you a series of questions about things that are relevant right now to the people of the United States about the state of public health in this country. Since President Trump took office in 2025, more than 4,500
Y'all answer that poll in the chat. Did you get vaccinated?
have been reported. That is more cases in the year and a half
I got vaccinated.
Trump has been president than were reported from 2000 to 2024 combined.
And got 2 boosters.
Children are dying because there has been increased vaccine hesitancy.
If I don't make it past 40, y'all know why.
Kennedy Jr., Secretary of Health and Human Services, and
But you're going to have to deal with me until then.
administration. Thousands of people in the United States of America have been sickened by a foodborne parasite, and the outbreak is nowhere near under control, as staffing at the FDA and other critical public health entities has been slashed by Russell Vought and Elon Musk. Last year, the National Institutes of Health awarded 201 fewer grants compared to the previous years. 207, I am corrected. Compared to previous years. As those grants were either canceled or delays, especially at the beginning of the Trump administration, I can tell my colleagues what the impact was on people in New Hampshire, on scientists in New Hampshire.
It don't. It ain't got nothing.
People's cancer treatment was interrupted because Elon Musk and Russell Vought know better, they say, than the people at NIH about what to fund. And because they did some sort of word search, it seems, for some of the grants, and boy, oh boy, if you were studying rural health in New Hampshire and trying to understand how to better engage people who need health care in rural America, that was off the table. America is losing researchers and scientists to other countries because researchers and scientists, highly trained, highly qualified, invested in often by the American taxpayer, are finding the hostility from this administration so strong that it interferes with their science, and they want to pursue science wherever that science takes them. I also sit on the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee. We have had a number of hearings with nominees recently to fill critical spots. One of those nominees is Dr. Erica Schwartz, a brilliant woman, medical degree, biomedical engineering degree. I think she also told us she has a law degree and a master's in public health. She was a 2-star admiral in the United States Navy, an experienced doctor. And yet, when I asked her if she would push back at Secretary Kennedy, if he instructed her to suspend the promotion of the flu vaccine as he did some point in the last few months, there's an email to prove it, she couldn't answer that question. She either could not, would not, or had been bullied into.
So this is how today is going to go. They're going to ask him questions. The Republicans are going to ask him questions, and he's going to plead the fifth, right? And then the Democrats are just going to sit here and attack Donald Trump and RFK Jr. And that's literally how the whole day is going to go. So, I don't know, man. Yeah, whatever.
People with disabilities and
just letting y'all know what we signed up for.
Promote disproved science.
She needs to get that microphone out of her mouth.
Of healthcare and public health in this country right now, not to mention the $1 trillion or so of cuts to the Medicaid program that is decimating healthcare in my state and decimating it around the country, not to mention the refusal of my colleagues and this administration to extend critical tax cuts for people who are trying to afford insurance on the Affordable Care Act.
Critical tax cuts.
One of my community health clinics, and they are reporting fewer and fewer people coming in for care, disrupting care because they can no longer afford health insurance. And that is impacting, of course, the revenue stream to the community health clinic, their ability to hire and pay people, their ability to take care of their community. That's what I wish we were having hearings about in this committee and in the Health Committee. That's what I wish we were trying to address in a bipartisan way. But instead, we are here in an attempt to entrap you because you had a distinguished career.
Holy shit. Okay, so the police chief that works in Seattle lives in Chicago, works as a police chief in Seattle. He gets paid $374,000 a year, baby. Woo-wee, man. Make me police chief. All I got to do is show up once a month. Are we good?
That have come up, and hopefully in some day in the future.
I'll run that bitch through Zoom calls all day.
There were over 1 million Americans that died.
John Jones, thank you for the $5. I am pure blood and proud. Couldn't work after college because of it, though.
Those affected.
Prosecute Fauci. Prosecute Fauci.
Days.
Thank you, sir, for the 5.
Lessons that we've got to learn from this, that we should put into history.
Y'all want to help me get to that super chat goal?
Future. How do we respond?
10 $5 super chat.
It was uncharted territory for everyone. But I would tell you,
you know, we're going to be live tonight too.
Watched a loved one die behind glass or through a screen because we couldn't get access to them. Children couldn't get to school. People missed their prom or graduation ceremonies.
My son was born in 2020.
That dramatically changed the future of the country.
Nobody could be there. It was just me, my wife.
To deal with from the isolation have been profound.
Having to wear masks.
Something as simple as children.
And our son was born.
Masks or around adults wearing masks for all that time are slower in learning language now because they couldn't watch someone's lips moving, and so they're slower in that. Amazingly enough, churches and places of worship were forced to be closed down. There were even churches that met where the pastor preached in the parking lot and the congregants all met in their cars with windows up, and police came and scattered them and said, "You can't be here." The simple act of social distancing became an issue. As everyone guessed, what's the right distance to be away from someone else? Literacy rates have declined. All these things are results, not to mention the loss of lives and the health experiences that have been out there for many Americans. So there are legitimate questions. I wanted to be able to raise some of those, to be able to walk through some of this, because it has been very, very challenging. as we've gone through some of your notes and your diary and other things that are out there, we're trying to be able to pull bits and pieces of things to be able to learn lessons. On May the 6th, 2020, you wrote at that time, I had a conversation with Robert Redfield, as you know well, was then the director of CDC, about the fact that greater than 1 million children worldwide have missed their measles vaccination because of the shutdown. You stated, this is terrible and needs to be addressed, since on that basis alone, there would be far more excess deaths from measles among children than coronavirus deaths among children. I need to bring this up to the TF, the task force. Did you ever have an opportunity to bring up the potential of measles deaths among children and an infection rate going around the world from measles based on the fact that so many children would not get their measles vaccine because of the shutdown?
I'm sorry, Senator, but on the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
That is your right to do. One of the big issues that's really coming up is on the lab issue. This was greatly discussed.
Hey, y'all, don't say stuff like that in the chat. Because,
there are obvious issues and differences between the two to be able to know this.
I don't really care, but just look out for yourself. You don't want to be caught saying stuff like that.
On this. There are different say you even made in your private notes and your public notes on it. In January the 2020, this is before we had our first tragic death of coronavirus in the United States. You wrote, it now appears using epi data that the genomic data, the first infection was in early December and was not connected to the market, which was the big rumor that was out there, is this wet market in China. We know the market was not the source, it was the amplifier. On January the 31st, you wrote about a phone call. You wrote, the people on the phone felt the mutations around the furin cleavage site of the spike protein could not have occurred naturally, since it would require an evolutionary jump that they found nowhere in bat isolates. They bring up the possibility this could have been deliberately inserted and either accidentally released or deliberately released by a crazy person in the lab, the former being the most likely. February the 1st, same year, 2020. This is again still before our first death. There was not total agreement about the likelihood of deliberate insertion. Ron said he was sure that this could occur naturally and we should not waste our time and divert our effort to pursue this. This is expected of him since he was the original gain-of-function person with Yoshi. Also, Christian was with Ron. The rest felt deliberate insertion was possible, and given the fact that Dr. Jingling Shi at the University of Wuhan has been working for years in gain-of-function in coronaviruses to allow adaptation of the spike protein to bind to the human ACE2 receptor.
Coley, thank you for the $5. He said, no vaccine has had a real placebo double-blind testing. Admitted under oath, I've still got the receipts.
Thing was moving.
Thank you for the $5, brother.
Before any of us had ever heard of the Wuhan lab, not only the Wuhan lab in the conversation, but literally the scientist that you named in your own notes, the lead scientist that was there. It's interesting to me on that. And the questions I was going to ask you was just your background and knowledge about the Wuhan lab and Dr. Shi and all the details. I'm aware of where you have been on trying to be able to plead your Fifth Amendment right, which is your right to be able to do. But I also want to be able to find out some facts to be able to help us for the future on this. The Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory in May of 2020 put out a classified document that has only been recently unclassified on this, that had this statement: we assess all the necessary conditions for an accidental release of a laboratory-modified coronavirus, specifically a coronavirus adapted to recognize human cell receptors, were present at the Chinese Wuhan Institute of Virology in mid to late 2019. Now, the question that I had for you is, this is May the 27th of 2020. This is the report that most people will see is this. I have clearance. I serve on the Intelligence Committee. I've actually read this complete document unredacted. My concern is, were you given the ability to see this document unredacted based on your position? Were you able to see this and to be able to get this information? I could see it, and I know what's here. Everybody else just has their conclusion at the beginning.
Probably.
Of it, not this.
Or they're just being safe just in case.
did you have access? Because it's important for the future that people in your position do have access to this kind of information and insight. Is there any way you could answer that question? Were you able to give access to this data?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to.
I'll be right back, y'all.
Upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
You wrote on January the 26th of 2020, we should be allowed to send our CDC epidemiologists to China to work with them so they could see the data firsthand. You also wrote in February 12th, 2020, that you had great concerns about the World Health Organization because it depends greatly on China and, as you stated, often bows to them. Now, this is a really important issue that we've got to resolve for the future. It's not just our cooperation with Chinese scientists, it's our acknowledgement that China covered up their data, wouldn't allow our scientists to be able to come in. They cleaned up the wet market, they cleaned up the other areas. They wouldn't allow you to get access to all the other scientists who are there, including their health records, what happened to them, or even all the sequencing that they had done in advance. For the future of our research and our cooperation with any scientist around the world, I think it's really important that we resolve, if we're going to fund research and cooperate with you, we've got to have certain things from you. If things go sideways, we've got to have access to all information in all places. You were noting not only that China was affecting the World Health Organization and that China was bending them to their will, and so the World Health Organization was putting out data that you saw, at least at that point, as being from a Chinese perspective, covering up what was going on. But you also noted we weren't able to get access to all this information. We've got to be able to figure this out for the future to be able to make sure that research that is done, we have access to all information. If something goes sideways at some point, which clearly it did at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and that being, as was noted by many people, the only lab in the world that was doing research like this that had a lower standard of actually their security standards than many other labs around the world. They were doing very dangerous research. What can we gain? And what advice could you give us to say in a future setting, we've got to make sure that we actually get information from people and we can be guaranteed that we're going to get that insight?
We're supposed to be on camera.
Yes, sir.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my
Sorry, we're having
to the Constitution.
difficulties over here.
Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to go back to the dark days of the coronavirus pandemic, one of the darkest days or times in our history. Hospitals were overflowing. Navy medical ships were docked in the Hudson River. Emergency rooms were forced into unprecedented triaging during the worst week of the pandemic, which happens to have been the last week of President Trump's first term. More than 25,000 Americans died of COVID-19. Easy to forget those dark days. But for the past 18 months, the Trump administration has been engaged in a campaign to rewrite this history. And today's proceeding, I fear, is part of that effort, one of the darkest days in our Senate's history. The Trump administration has launched a baseless set of smears against vaccines that help pull us out of that public health crisis, vaccines that are undoubtedly President Trump's greatest accomplishment. It has slashed funding to local public health departments that were on the front lines of the pandemic. And those healthcare workers are heroes. It has disparaged those heroes as woke or wasteful. And it has used a politicized Department of Justice to target the researchers who helped us track and understand the novel virus. Today's hearing is another page in that playbook, sadly, tragically. Dr. Fauci, you've spent 5 decades in public service, including nearly 4 decades in leadership at the National Institutes of Health, helping to conquer COVID-19, but also HIV, swine flu, Zika, Ebola, and other epidemics with real-life results saving human lives. Put aside all the flowery rhetoric that we hear in the United States Senate. Dr. Fauci has saved lives, as have public health officials in the United States and throughout the world. And today, we are demeaning and degrading their life-saving service. Republicans are eager to rebrand you as a villain in order to distract from their own failure to protect Americans from soaring healthcare costs. They've been rising astronomically in the last couple of years, and from unsafe food, which has caused cyclospora to spread, and resurgent measles as a result of the anti-vaccine policy. This hearing is the culmination of a years-long crusade, which started more than 6 years ago when Dr. Fauci dared to contradict President Trump. The campaign to vilify you, Dr. Fauci, is just one part of this larger campaign against science and facts, a campaign that has made Americans less safe. It is shameful that in a country like ours, a dedicated public service like Dr. Fauci has experienced persistent threats to his life since the pandemic because of the lies that are told about him. His attorney has been gagged, thrown out of this hearing room. But
yeah, he got deported.
He has written a letter to the chairman that is an explanation for the reasons why Dr. Fauci is, in fact, invoking his constitutional right. It is a right. And I would ask that this letter...
Nobody said it wasn't.
And Danny Onato be made a part of the record if there's no
Without
objection.
objection.
His attorney has also issued a statement within the last half hour, I believe, that sets forth, again, the reasons that he is here to help protect his client's rights. And I would ask that that statement be made part of the record as well, Mr. Chairman.
Objection, Your Honor. That man is a Jew.
Clear. The Fifth Amendment.
Sorry, I've still got Tyler Robinson trial
Everyone
syndrome
for an authority like this one. It should be respected.
TRS, Tyler Robinson
and
syndrome.
The reason that Dr.
TRTS, Tyler Robinson trial syndrome. There we go.
In the words of his attorney, quote, during and after the COVID-19 pandemic, he appeared at least a dozen times for congressional hearings in the Senate alone in answer to questions about the very issues on which you purport to seek information. He has been thoroughly transparent and consistent in providing factual information to Congress, and he is deeply familiar with the processes and protocols of sharing information.
Objection. Hearsay.
Legislative brand.
Hey, that's your client.
And then
that's your client. Your client's testimony. Yeah, but my client's dumb, Your Honor.
This is not a serious effort to seek information from Dr. Fauci in a transcribed interview for a valid legislative purpose. You are single-mindedly
Amber,
fixated
did you know,
Fauci,
the bed?
Dr. Fauci prosecuted for imaginary crimes, and you are so invested in that outcome that you have created.
Is it true that your new nickname was
to the words of
Amber Turd?
His attorney, and he cites as well the statements of the chairman, which indicate a clear intent.
Sis in the back, man, she's seen some shit.
The result of this proceeding be a prosecution. Quote, the power of some of us must be used for good, like putting Fauci in jail. That's from December 20.
That coffee is not hot anymore.
I want to give him a subpoena and a jail cell.
A subpoenas, what?
From December
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
2025. The first was 2020.
Wrong button.
Those kinds of statements by the chairman of a committee.
Your Honor, I'd like to give him my subpoenas.
Provide a well-founded fear that the proceeding underway is simply an effort to trap Dr. Fauci in some kind of criminal wrongdoing. That is not the purpose of a congressional hearing, not the valid purpose of a congressional hearing.
Oh, God.
Some of the dark days in...
Like, y'all don't fucking do this every day, too. Stop it.
Under Senator Joe McCarthy, it became standard operating procedure to seek that kind of prosecutorial objective. We should not be part of a rerun of that kind of effort. This attempt to rebrand one of the most challenging times in our nation's history is a short-sighted act of desperation that will leave us less prepared for the next pandemic. It is an insult to the memory of more than 1 million Americans who died from COVID-19. If there are valid scientific questions about the origins of this pandemic, COVID-19, about the kinds of steps that were taken to counter it, about the need for more preparation, they should certainly be addressed, but not in a show trial, not as part of a continuing vendetta against a single individual. And unfortunately, I fear that is what we are seeing today. America deserves better. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
In no courtroom in America can you have your witness plead the Fifth Amendment and then your attorney gets to testify. That's what that letter is. The attorney's complaining and testifying, saying, he didn't do it, the prosecution's unfair. You don't get to do that. That's one thing you give up when you take the Fifth Amendment. You say, I'm not going to testify. I'm not going to give you any information. You don't then get to put your lawyer forward to justify it. He can do it in the press, but you can't come and testify. He was not invited to testify, and he was out of order. And it was appropriate to have him injected. Senator.
Chairman Paul, thank you for doing this. I think I know in my state people have been asking questions about Dr. Fauci for years. So Dr. Fauci, your entry has made clear that you love being a hero, a celebrity, and here having the eyes of the world upon you. You loved every newspaper profile, every photo shoot, every fancy dinner with the elites. To many Americans who lost family members, who lost trust in our federal government, you're not a hero. Unfortunately, you're a villain. You made yourself the story and abandoned the American people to serve your own ego. To begin, I'd like to talk about your relationship with David Morenz. He was the senior advisor in the NIAID, Office of the Director, your office, for 16 years. He was your friend. He was a frequent guest at your house. You reportedly co-authored over 50 scientific articles with him. You turned to him first right after COVID-19 first occurred. Earlier this year, the Department of Justice charged him with conspiracy against the United States, in addition to other charges as part of a conspiracy to conceal information and falsify records to suppress alternative theories about the origins of COVID-19. Now, you've publicly kicked this man to the curb, saying, Dr. Morenz was not an advisor to me on institute policy or other substantive issues. So let's start with the use of personal Gmail accounts and David Morenz's relationship with Peter Daszak. David Morenz tells Peter Daszak, president of Equal Alliance, and you've got this in front of you, it's Exhibit 1. It's already in the record as part of this. It says, quote, P.S. I forgot to say that there is no worry about FOIA. I can either send stuff to Tony on his private Gmail or hand it to him at work or at his house. He is too smart to let colleagues send him stuff that could cause trouble. Dr. Fauci, did Dr. Morenz's relationship with Peter Daszak concern you? Yes or no?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did David Morenz ever bring documents to your house?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did you ever receive a text about your work at NIAID to your personal cell phone?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did any text about your work at NID that went to your personal cell phone ever become part of federal records?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon
You know what I heard?
Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Andrew Mercado used to be a Trump supporter,
As director.
right? And he said that
On the advice of
he turned his back on Trump because of the way he handled COVID.
under the Fifth
Said he did a terrible job.
Did you ever receive work-related communications on that Gmail account from David Morenz?
I'm guessing now he would say that Fauci was the best. He knew exactly what he was doing, and Trump just fucked it all up.
Constitution.
Did you
I guarantee you he would defend Fauci
communications on that Gmail account from David?
and blame Trump for everything.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did David Morenz ever provide you with documents outside
No, Andrew is just a grifter.
violate NIH policy?
Whatever's hot, whatever's easy to make money off of.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Now let's look at two other
That's
communications.
why I don't care about how much money I make.
On January 26, 2020.
I just do what I do. I stand with what I stand where I stand, and
Call me at
there ain't
home.
no changing that.
Part of Exhibit 2 that you have in front of you. This email
It
is
ain't about the money. The money's just a side effect.
exact same day you write in an internal document, quote, now we know the market was not the source, it was the amplifier, unquote. Would you call the origins of COVID-19 a substantive issue?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did you discuss COVID-19 origins with Demoranz on this phone call?
I don't give a damn.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Now let's take a closer look at the last time you testified before Congress. This is part of what you have in front of you is Exhibit 4, which is part of the record. In June 2024, you testified to Dr. Moran's, quote, was not an advisor to me on institute policy or other substantive issues. Furthermore, his office is located in a different building from that of the NIAID director, unquote. Is that still your testimony today?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
So today under oath, your testimony remains that Dr. Moran's was not an advisor to you on institute policy or substantive matters.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Now, I've got Exhibit 5, which you have in front of you. On October 24, 2020,
Y'all haven't hit that like button yet. Please hit that like button.
information about and advocate for the controversial EcoHealth Alliance grant. You thank him and tell him that you will check the information. Would you agree that this shows an advisory relationship between David Moran's and yourself?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Do you agree that you two were...
We still got an hour to hit that super chat goal.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
If documentary evidence establishes that Dr. Moran's advised you regarding EcoHealth Alliance, COVID origins, or grant policy, then your June 2024 testimony would have been inaccurate, correct?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Is there any document in your possession today that would contradict your prior...
This is such a waste of time.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Have you deleted, destroyed, or instructed anyone to destroy records after learning Congress is investigating these matters?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Are you aware of anyone who did?
Is that a body double?
Counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights.
It's not even the real Fauci.
To the Constitution.
As you know, Dr. Moran's now faces charges related to destroying records while you distance yourself from him. Is that fair to a decades-long friend?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
When is the last time you spoke to him?
They're doing.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon.
Well, that's the thing, crack shot. It doesn't matter how guilty he looks.
Hindsight, are you disappointed how
He's already guilty. We already deemed him guilty.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon.
This just confirms everything we know.
Amendment to the Constitution.
Dr. Fauci, I want to close with this. Here's how you impacted my family and people close to me. I have daughters with children. You can't imagine the questions they had around vaccines for their kids and themselves, and the pressure, the unbelievable pressure to make the right decision for their health. I can tell you pregnant women who worked with me were so scared because every time they went to the doctor, they were told something different about taking the vaccine.
Scuff, thank you for the 5. He said, I plead the field.
To protect their kids, or an expectant mother trying to figure out what to do. Every 3 weeks, a doctor tells you a new set of guidance on a vaccine. The haphazard information you released and pushed on the American people with little research is appalling, and why there's so much distrust in our institutions today. That trust is crucial to public health, and you, more than any person or event in my lifetime, have destroyed that trust for millions of Americans. You lied to hundreds of millions of people amid the worst public health crisis in a century. You failed to follow your own guidance. You forced people to watch their loved ones die alone over the phone. It's disgusting. You destroyed the federal government's credibility when it comes to public health. We have entire generations of Americans who, rightfully so, do not trust our institution to keep people safe because of you. This has destroyed decades of progress and lifetimes of work because you wanted to fuel your own ego and be the center of attention. What would you do differently knowing what you know today, Dr. Fauci?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
All the evidence is right here, and you still can't bring yourself to tell the truth or apologize because you received an auto-pin pardon from a staffer in the Biden White House. If we have another pandemic tomorrow, millions could die because of what you did to make Americans lose trust in their government when it comes to medicine and health care. How many families have you apologized to had to watch their loved ones die alone? You breached public trust, and now you're hiding behind a fraudulent pardon. Your legacy will not be as a man that saved America from COVID, but as a man who destroyed the public trust in America's public health institutions in exchange for 5 minutes of fame. This is how history will remember you. I yield back.
Ooh. Senator Kim.
He'll have to answer to these crimes.
Thank you, Dr. Fauci.
In the afterlife. But here,
out in front of this committee, I know it's not what you would want. It's not what you deserve.
Oh, God.
I just want to say and start by just saying thank you to you for your service to this nation.
Of course, the CCP spy
so much about you
wants to thank him for his service.
I came to...
Thank you for doing China's bidding.
Many Americans did, but I also had the opportunity...
You did something that China will never be able to do.
Someone who is a member of the Select Committee on the Coronavirus Crisis over in the House of Representatives. When I learned about your background, 38 years as the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease, appointed by President Reagan, served under 7 presidents, 4 Republicans and 3
Reagan, why'd you do it?
I admire that greatly. I myself...
Trump, why did you do it?
In the executive branch serving government.
Probably because of Reagan.
Both a Republican president and a Democratic president. And I believe that we need more of that type of work. A place where we can understand our jobs not as coming from a place of partisanship and politics, but that of just public service. And right now, I feel the hyperpartisanship growing in this country in dangerous ways. I feel it much more present here on the Hill than I did back when I served as a nonpartisan career public servant at the State Department. And
how come there's never any Asians that are Republican representatives or like Republican politicians?
When it comes next for
all the Asian politicians are always Democrat. I wonder what that is.
And it's not just in the attacks, but we see it brought out with the cuts to funding, to the firing of federal workers, to the demonization of their motivations.
I don't give a damn.
People calling our public servants criminals, thinking that they are there solely to undermine others that are trying to engage. I look at it right now. You know, it's not just that the people are being attacked, our public servants being attacked, but that it's undermining the very nature of the work of governance. You know, these cuts to HHS funding, to NIH funding, to the grants, cuts to the researchers doing the critical work to find cures and medicines. These firing and these cuts, they're creating a chilling effect, honestly, a chilling effect for the next generation of people who might consider stepping up to serve our nation, to be the next generation of researchers who now are wondering whether or not this is the right thing for them to do at a time when they see some of their colleagues or those that they looked up to being attacked, their funding being cut. Researchers that I talk to who are now either leaving the country or considering leaving the country to do their work because of the sheer unpredictability of America. That this nation so great, so powerful has now been crippled with this sense of unpredictability and unreliability. That is not the type of country that I hope we strive to be. I raised this because these attacks upon Dr. Fauci, it's not just—
I love that picture, by the way. Your profile picture.
To others who are about serving our country, our scientists, our doctors, our healthcare professionals, our researchers.
This chair is so comfortable. It's like hugging me.
You don't get in line with the politics that you will also potentially be subject to attacks. And from the work that he has done, from HIV/AIDS to Ebola to COVID, you know, we've seen him try to engage in these crises. They're not easy, especially when it's a novel disease, when you don't know what comes next, a lot of unknowns, having to make
got a footrest too.
The full breadth of knowledge we always wish we had in hindsight.
Oh, hell yeah, I'm going to sleep.
Perfect.
I'll see y'all tomorrow.
Clarity when it comes to pandemics, when it comes to crises. I worked in national security and wars and crises. I made judgment calls, gave my best advice to generals, to ambassadors, even to a president. Did I get it all right? No. Did I do my best? I did everything I thought I could with the information that I had. The public servants, they do this work because they love this country and that they strive to improve it. It's not an easy job, but it is because there is so much at stake in our country. But these public servants do it because they are in the arena. I just want to end by just reading a portion of this because I think it's important as we're thinking about how to be able to treat public servants through this country, to think through this. And in the words of Teddy Roosevelt saying, it's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs but comes short again and again, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumphs of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Thank you for your service, Dr. Fauci. I yield back.
Senator Olin.
Dude just spent a whole 5 minutes just kissing his ass.
Well, nothing says honesty like
give him that gawk 3000.
Let's try something. What day of the week is it today?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color tie are you wearing?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color is the carpet in front of you?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Let's just get one thing straight. You don't have any rights under the Fifth Amendment because you've been pardoned, as you very well know. As the Supreme Court has been clear for a century and more, Brown versus Walker, 1896, when he has been pardoned, he may not stand upon his privilege. You know that. Your lawyers sitting behind you now shifting nervously in their chairs, they know it. This isn't about the Constitution. This isn't about the law. This is about contempt. Contempt for this body and contempt for the— But I think I know why you're doing it. It's because You don't want to answer questions. It's because you did all kinds of terrible things. It's because during the pandemic, you got rich, didn't you? You got rich while people were dying, hundreds of thousands of Americans, over 1 million in the end, and you were getting rich. And not only were you doing that, you were using federal employees with taxpayer money to apply for and solicit cash prizes for you personally. Cash prizes totaling over $1 million. You did all of that during the pandemic, didn't you? That's a question.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
You remember Greg Folkers? Who was that?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Your chief of staff is the answer. Do you remember Patricia Conrad? Who was that?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
She was your personal assistant. And what were these individuals doing in the depth of the pandemic in November of 2020 when millions of Americans were suffering from COVID? What were they doing? I tell you what they're doing. Folkers was on your behalf soliciting and gathering information for a cash award. Let's look at it. We've got his email right here, right over my shoulder. Folkers says, I'm working on this nomination for the Dan David Award for Fauci. We need to beef up the COVID part. Do you have language in the can that you could share that delineates how we responded in new ways to COVID? He sends this to multiple federal employees. What was the Dan David Award? Do you remember, Doc?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
It was a $900,000 cash award. $900,000 cash award. And he got it because he used federal employees to get it. And this wasn't the only award, was it, Dr. Fauci? In fact, you applied for and received at least 8 other federal cash prizes on federal time using federal employees and federal resources. Here they are over my shoulder. Besides the Dan David Award, you've got the Partnership for Public Service, you've got the Adelson Prize, you've got the Smithsonian Award, you've got the National Academy of Medicine's Award, you've got the CDC Foundation. In fact, you turned your staff into a full-time application machine. You actually wrote to people and said, do you think maybe I'd qualify? And you got cash for all of this. And it wasn't just 1 or 2 employees, was it? In fact, you used 8 separate federal employees on federal time using federal resources to solicit cash awards. Isn't that true?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Here they are right over my shoulder. Here's all of them. The people that you use, federal employees, so that you could go and get cash money. And the most hilarious part is that you weren't content to even dragoon them into applying for all of these cash awards. You then had them go out to the ethics agencies and ethics watchdogs and demand that you be able to get the money. That's right. We've got it in your emails. Your staff and employees on federal time, using federal resources, being paid with federal dollars, are soliciting cash for you. And then they're turning around and saying to the agency, we don't want just an answer. We want to get to yes, because Fauci wants the money. He wants it. We want to get to yes, and yes takes time. This is your chief of staff again, using federal email to pressure the agency's own ethics people so that you could get money, so that you could get rich. And it violated the law, didn't it, Dr. Fauci? Didn't it?
I plead the fifth.
It violated the law, didn't it? It is a question. You can answer. Go ahead.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment.
He finally said something. He said, is that a question?
Very well no. Prohibits the solicitation of cash awards or other personal benefits for federal employees. And it certainly prohibits using your own employees to do this. 5 CFR section 2635-205B. It says it right there in black and white. You cannot use federal resources, federal dollars, federal employees, federal offices, federal email, federal time to solicit cash awards, and you did all of it. And the worst part is thousands of people were dying while you were doing it. You were supposed to be the nation's doctor, and you're playing one on TV, but this is what you were doing with your time. Isn't that true?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Yeah, I can see why. I can certainly see why. You know what I can't quite figure out is that why you were so obsessed with it, because you're already rich. I mean, and your scheme worked here. I mean, your net worth now is north of $12 million. You got over $1 million in cash awards during COVID, during a 12-month, 24-month span during COVID. $1 million you knocked down in cash money using federal resources. Now you're worth more than $12 million. You've got a pension that in its first year paid out north of $400,000 a year. 1 million people dead, you're getting rich. 1 million people dead, you're using federal employees to get cash awards for you. 1 million people dead, and you're here taking the fifth because you don't want to admit that what really happened in all that time was a multi-month, multi-year course of self-dealing. Isn't that true, Dr. Fauci?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Yeah, well, silence is admission. And here's the real thing. At the end of the day, it wasn't just about the money, really, was it? It was really about a power trip. I mean, through all of this, you want to be the most famous scientist in the world. You were so focused on getting every award and every drop of cash that you could, all because you wanted to be on TV. You wanted to be the sun god of science. You wanted to be the guy who was in charge of it all. You wanted to lambast Trump. You wanted to make sure that nobody else stole your spotlight. You wanted to be the guy. You had time to sit for InStyle magazine. Here's what you were doing with your time. You could sit for InStyle magazine, but you can't answer questions for the American people. You could sit for InStyle magazine, but you're here taking the fifth. You could sit for InStyle magazine and get $1 million in cash awards, but now the cat's got your tongue. I bet he does. I tell you what, here's my conclusion from all of this. This was really all about you the whole time. Somewhere along the way, you lost your way. You may have been a good public servant at one time, I don't know. But I can tell you from reading your emails now, from looking at what you did, how you used your employees, somewhere along the line, it became all about you. You became a narcissist and a megalomaniac and a liar. And you've lied to the American people, and you've lied to this body. And you've disgraced your profession by doing it. You called yourself the most famous scientist in the world. You've done more to harm science than anybody in my lifetime. And I hope you'll go home and write that in your diary.
Write that in your fucking bitch-made diary.
Senator Fetterman.
Thank you, Mr.
His
Chairman.
diary.
Dr. Fauci, I'm not here to perhaps attack you or defend or anything. It's really just more, honestly, I just want to acknowledge I have had members of my family die from COVID, and now I also grieve for people that I've met that have lost their business through the pandemic, and they'll never been the same. Now, as during the pandemic, I was the lieutenant governor, so we were in the middle of all of that maelstrom, trying to find the right balance between protect life and protect the economics and for all of it. And I'm not sure if we got it all right or wrong, but without a doubt, I can continue to question myself. But one that it's not about much more your regrets, but I have one. And that is early on that there was the theory that the virus could have emerged from the lab. And early on that became like a right-wing kinds of theory. And I thought it seemed to make sense. Now there was a really advanced lab that was close by, and then you have this unknown virus out. So, but that became a very partisan thing. And now it seems now it's more and more emerging theory that would have come from the lab. Now, you know, I think that the next time our nation's facing something like this, we are not become, as I might have been, blinded by the partisan idea that maybe the truth might come from a side that's different than you are. But I think we should really be willing to pursue truth, no matter where that may have emerged, after for all of that. So, and I now cede the remain back to the chair. Thank you.
Senator
basically said,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I will echo Senator Johnson.
we shouldn't just dismiss it as a right-wing theory. We should probably actually look into it.
Very, very well done. Mr. Fauci, do you know who David Schertler is?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. What does the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution say?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
No, I'm just asking you what it says.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under
That was a nice trick, but it wasn't going to work.
I'm going to give the Constitution to my aide. He'll bring it over to you so you can have it for future reference. I think it's something that every American should know what the Constitution says. Do you know who wrote the Fifth Amendment?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
So you're invoking a right that you don't know who wrote it or what it says. Is that correct?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Wow. All right, let me tell you who David Schertler is for the audience because he was ejected by the chairman. He's a high-profile criminal attorney. He's represented some really great people, like Senator Bob Menendez. Maybe that's somebody who my Democrat colleagues may remember took gold bars as bribes from the Egyptians. And there's an article here at Washington Free Beacon that talks about why you would hire a guy like David Schertler. And the comment is, if you're in deep shit, that's who you call. Do you feel like you're in deep shit?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
You feel like you're in deep shit?
Clearly, what you think today is that somehow you're above reproach. Somehow you feel like you don't need to be treated like a normal American. Can you do me a favor in the audience and stand up if during the time of the COVID pandemic, you were called a racist for calling the virus a Wuhan virus or the China virus? If you thought the 6-foot rule was total crap, if you thought the vaccine wasn't something that you should take, if you thought it was outrageous the way the mask policy was rolled out, if you were fired from your job for not taking that vaccine, including members of the military, if you thought closing schools was catastrophically stupid, and that you thought that during these times saying these things
stand out,
made you somehow a lesser human being.
Everybody should stand out. Yeah, fuck yeah.
Patrick, can you just turn around and look at the people behind you? You're not willing to do that? That's not a question. It's not a question. To your lawyer, it's not a question. It's a request. All you have to do is look up from your lawyers.
Just plead the fifth.
Look at the people who were absolutely shamed for saying what we know now to be the truth. You can't even look at them? That's a question. Are you able to look at them? You can sit down in the audience. There was a mom in Ohio during the depth of the coronavirus pandemic, decided to go to her high school football game for her son. They hadn't been out much. The kids had been learning at school, and then the school got shut down. They hadn't really gotten much out of that education. As any parent knew, that remote learning was no learning at all. But it was a Friday night. Her son wanted to go watch a buddy go play football. So they went to the stadium. they sat alone, far from everybody else, just a mom, a dad, a few kids. They didn't feel they needed to wear masks because it was stupid, because they were outside. They all live together. They're not near anybody.
There's people that still drive around today with masks on.
That's a question.
Look over and see them in their car
Counsel, I
alone
decline
with
to
a mask
based
on,
upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
They were
just inhaling their breath.
dragged out of that stadium and arrested. Those policies were put in place because you had moronic politicians that listened to the words of a megalomaniac who was more interested in having met a Kardashian than the suffering of the American people. And that is you. Your advice to communities like that, to idiotic politicians who enforce those rules, arrested that mom for watching a football game with her own family outside. When that story broke, I said to myself, I cannot stand idly on the side and watch this happen. It was about 6 years ago today that I decided I'm going to give up my businesses, sell them all, run for office, run for the United States Senate. Here I am sitting in front of you 6 years later saying, who the fuck do you think you were for doing that? It is a total disgrace what you did to this country. And if my Democrat colleagues are
Can he say that?
defending you, I hope the voters of the United States of America watch the clips of every one of you doting on a guy who was more interested in being a celebrity than saving American people. I will make it my mission to make certain that every single one of those Democrats who did that will see that clip over and over and over again. Because there is no defense of what you did. You may have had a 50-plus year legacy of public service, but it ends in total and complete disgrace. So let me ask you an opportunity to answer one question. Will you apologize, just apologize?
Nope.
To the people who you harmed through your actions? Will you say, do you have the dignity to just say you're sorry?
I plead the fifth.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
So you won't apologize to the military members who Joe Biden summarily dismissed from the military for not taking the vaccine?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Will you apologize to the business owners that lost their business, shattered their lives, and they'll never recover?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Will you apologize to the moms who had to force their infant children, 2, 3, 4-year-olds, to put masks on, and what that did and how that traumatized those kids?
I never put a mask on my son.
Under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Will you apologize to the family members of the people who died because they took your advice and not only got the first vaccine, but the 5, 6 other boosters that they did not need?
Sounds like they're kind of breaking his spirit a little bit.
To answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Will you apologize to that mom from Ohio for being arrested for watching
mute his
a football
microphone
game with her family? So you didn't know who wrote the Fifth Amendment. It's James Madison. Lived in this town. I can only wonder what he would think of somebody like you invoking his writings to shield culpability for the actions that you took. It's no secret why you have to hire the biggest dirtbag attorney on the planet because of what you did. I hope you're paying him well. And I hope that one way or the other, somewhere, sometime, you answer for your crimes.
Senator Ernst.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this important hearing today. Dr. Fauci, Americans haven't forgotten the tragic stories of people who lost loved ones during COVID and those that were denied a chance to say goodbye to their family members that were in hospitals or residing in nursing homes because of the COVID-19 protocols. Americans haven't forgotten the mandates, the adverse reactions to vaccines, the government misinformation, social media censorship, hotlines to tattle on their neighbors, the forced school closures, the tragic rise in suicides, or those businesses that were forced to close during lockdowns.
Yeah.
Americans haven't forgotten the hundreds of billions of dollars spent by taxpayers for COVID relief, stolen by fraudsters who bought Rolls Royces and yachts. These were taxpayer dollars. Americans have lost trust in science and government after the COVID response. Trust which will be incredibly difficult for us to gain back. Dr. Fauci, you have said that the science was evolving and that your recommendations evolved with it. But Americans remember you as the public face of the coronavirus response. As one of the nation's most trusted voices, you urged policies you said were absolutely necessary, even when those policies came at an enormous human and economic cost. And Americans deserve answers about reports that you may have worked with others to pressure the president into adopting the slow the spread strategy, and why you later sought an unconditional pardon for crimes you may have committed dating back to 2014.
Uh-oh.
Dr. Fauci, in 2022, you had a taxpayer-funded salary of $480,000 a year. You were, in fact, the highest paid federal employee in the entire federal government, even making more than the NIH director and the president of the United States. According to now public documents.
Well, he was getting paid like $1, wasn't he?
In large part to your work on biodefense. Unreported is how NIAID spent over $1 billion from 2009 to 2026 in biodefense and influenza federal contracts and subcontracts. My office uncovered records on usaspending.gov that show from 2015 to 2020, NIAID paid out $515,418 in subcontracts to Harbin Veterinary Institute in Harbin, China, including $100,000 a few days after it opened a BSL-4 biolab in 2018. That very same institute was criticized for doing gain-of-function bird flu research in 2013. And yet you were funding them for years after that, sending U.S. taxpayer dollars to China. These contracts, which we also trace to NIAID, show U.S. taxpayers funded gain.
He didn't have a choice. He got subpoenaed.
In the Netherlands and in Wisconsin.
It's either he show up or he gets arrested.
Controversial work led President Obama to pause this exact type of dangerous pandemic research. Dr. Fauci, did you know that the NIH's billion-dollar Sears contract programs were funding gain-of-function researchers in China, the U.S., and in the Netherlands.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Dr. Fauci, Dr. Deborah Birx wrote in her book that you and President Obama's former CDC director were at a Saturday, March 14th, 2020 meeting at her home 2 days before the president announced his 15 days to slow the spread effort. Your now released diary said the meeting was a week before that. Dr. Birx said you all were trying to trap the president into having no other options. She wrote, your plan was to, quote, block any of the president's escape routes. So, quote, he'd have no choice but to agree to our flatten the curve measures. Yes or no, Dr. Fauci, did you try to block or trap President Trump into the slow the spread, flatten the curve measures in March 2020?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my
Look at this
rights under the
cuck
Fifth
shit.
Amendment to the
Okay,
Constitution.
status coup
When
news,
the
status cuck
COVID-19
news.
virus broke out in Wuhan, China, you, Dr. Fauci, knew pretty much right away that NIH had funded Chinese labs, including those doing coronavirus.
Trump officially declares U.S. war economy.
From early
Leaked
January
ICE prison video reveals
flagging
mass rape and torture.
NIH funded coronavirus research at the Wuhan lab through EcoHealth Alliance.
What is with the left,
You
man? They just
Americans
can't
knew
tell
we
the
funded
truth or what?
Wuhan lab because the funding went through a sub-award and was not reported to the public database
they just-
like USA.
I think they're addicted to propaganda.
Should have been.
Addicted to lies.
EcoHealth violated federal
I don't know how to explain it.
to report in its research papers how much taxpayer funding it spent on that
Probably
research.
an AI, probably a video from Cartel Prison.
Accountability
Probably an
Office
AI video.
$1.4 million.
Some video from like
U.S. taxpayer money that was sent to
2008.
the Wuhan Institute of Virology, both by you, Dr. Fauci, and through USAID. But first it passed through EcoHealth Alliance, which I helped to get defunded through the NDAA.
Yeah, why is it a diary, not a journal?
Intentionally used subaward funding to obscure NIH funding of Chinese biolabs and coronavirus research.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
NIAID awarded multi-million-dollar grants to a number of scientists shortly after they wrote publicly in the Proximal Origins paper that the COVID virus likely came from nature. Though documents Chairman Paul released last week show in private, those same scientists were much more open to the virus being from a lab. In 2023, Representative Jordan insinuated that you basically gave a $9 million bribe in the form of an NIH grant to NIH-funded virologists to say the virus likely was from nature. Dr. Fauci, yes or no, did you reward the Proximal Origin authors by giving them NIAID grants or
I plead the
contracts?
fifth. When's the Russ thinking for the five? He said the thing isn't that he pleads the fifth, it's that so much info is being brought to the people for the first time.
Dr. Fauci, we have learned that U.S. coronavirus researchers at UNC shipped, quote, humanized or transgenic mice to China by around 2017 for use in their dangerous coronavirus work. Under your NIAID coronavirus, researchers also used aborted baby body parts in mice research, and taxpayers paid for them to do that. NIH-funded coronavirus researcher Dr. Ralph Barrick and his colleagues at UNC put parts of livers, thymuses, and chunks of human fetal lung that they got from aborted, almost 5-month-old human babies. They put those parts in their research mice. They disgustingly named them BLTL mice and wrote they had created a, quote, sandwich of aborted body parts in the mice. Get it, folks?
Oh,
BLT.
God.
A BLT sandwich. Your RML lab employees in Montana also ordered and used aborted baby body parts in their taxpayer-funded research. And emails show how they plan to use those mice for post-COVID work. NIH funded putting aborted babies' fingers and scalps off the heads of
That's
aborted
the tell.
babies and putting them into the backs of research mice. The scalps later grew fine baby hair in the mice. They even included those disgusting photos in their research paper that you funded. Not all of those were research on coronaviruses, but some were. Thankfully, the current NIH director has said, no more of this. Dr. Fauci, yes or no? Do you think that human aborted parts should be put into mice for coronavirus research?
The advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Wow,
Mr. Chairman, would you direct the witness to answer the questions that we have been asking?
He probably would if he was here, but I can direct it. But no, I think we understand his answer.
We do understand that. Americans are asking for accountability, Dr. Fauci, and your silence is very telling. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Moody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Crazy, man.
You know, I'm the most junior member of the Senate here, showing from where I sit. I just got here last year. Many of you may remember I was the Attorney General in Florida who fought back against the lockdowns, the school closures, the church closures, everything to embrace sanity and science. We fought back. We got ridiculed.
He's not even looking at her.
And we didn't just call people names. We actually impaneled a grand jury of people of all walks of life, all political persuasions. So that's how I came here, fighting for a free state amongst states that had locked their own people down. We are now called the Free State of Florida. And I believe our responsibility here is to make sure that government remembers the people are our bosses, that we report to them, that we're accountable to them. Government shouldn't operate for itself. Government operates on behalf of and for the American people. And anytime we get close to reporting back to our bosses about what government has done or how it's been abused or how individuals that are employed by the government had acted in their own self-interest or against the interests of the American people, every time we get close, if we start uncovering outrageous fraud, we'll have a hearing, and the tactics have been to not show up. So you'll have all of us over here trying to drill down on why we've been giving money that actually works against American citizens, and no one shows up. Today nobody's here at the moment. Today there seems to be a different tactic. Today we have Democrats showing up and trying to spin why we shouldn't even be having this hearing to report back to our bosses. One said, today's hearing does damage. It will deter others from public service. Another said, this hearing is designed to entrap you. Another said, one fell all over himself, flattering you, thanking you for your service multiple times, quoting man in the arena. Another said that we are demeaning first responders. And today is a sad play in a repeated playbook.
Demeaning first responders coming from the party of defund the police.
All of their time was used on why we should not be having the hearing to report back to our bosses and give the people accountability. So I would like to talk about that because I believe that the trust the American people place in our public health institutions and what happened to that trust during COVID is important. Because in a public health emergency, they are asked to make extraordinary sacrifices based on advice given to them by the government that is supposed to be working for them. And for that system to work, the public has to be able to trust the people giving them instructions. That trust depends on candor. Would you agree with that, Dr. Fauci?
I plead the field.
Counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights.
Another
under the Fifth
one.
Amendment to the Constitution.
And when the evidence is uncertain, officials need to say so. When recommendations are based on assumptions rather than hard data, they need to say so. And when they get something wrong, they need to own it. And when the trust is lost and the consequences extend far beyond,
You know, they can still do the whole process of taking them to court,
public health officials
charge them with
do, and
something.
they need Americans to listen.
Just because you get a pardon like that doesn't mean you can't go through the legal process.
Undeniably the face of the federal government's COVID response. You said so yourself in your diary. You said it's not hyperbole to say, I've become the most famous and talked about person in the country. So I want to understand how we got here.
Right? It's not like a get out of jail free
Let's start at
card.
the beginning.
Well, I mean, technically it is, but it's not like
You're on 60 Minutes to discuss the spread of COVID.
they can't have a trial and
Asked to clear up
unleash discovery and all that.
information surrounding masks. You told the American people right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with a mask. The interviewer immediately stopped you and said, are you sure of it? Because people are listening really closely to this. And instead of walking back or qualifying your statement in any way, you doubled down. There's no reason to be walking around with a mask. When you're in the middle of an outbreak, wearing a mask might make people feel a little better. It might even block a droplet, but it's not providing the perfect protection that people think it is. And often there are unintended consequences. People keep fiddling with their masks. They keep touching their face. Just a few weeks later, the CDC released its guidance recommending that Americans wear masks in public. You were asked to explain your original recommendation. You emphasized a very different consideration. You said, well, back then, the critical issue was to save the masks for the people who really needed them because it was felt there was a shortage of masks. So I want everybody to sit with that. The critical issue driving your initial recommendation to the American public was scarcity, logistics, not medical evidence. So when you told the American people there was no reason to wear a mask, what was your principal objective? Giving them an honest assessment of the medical evidence or discouraging them from consuming a scarce supply of masks?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Well, unfortunately, that was just the beginning of a broader pattern. Let's talk about the 6-foot distancing rule. In April 5th, 2020, interview on CBS said, every time I get to that podium in the White House briefing room, I always essentially plead with people. Please take a look at those very simple guidelines of physical separation. And they're very, very clear. Physically separate 6 feet away. Yet when Congress finally asked you in 2024 what science supported that evidence, 6-foot distance rule for COVID, you admitted you were not aware of any studies supporting it. Incredibly, you said the 6-foot rule sort of just appeared and described it as an empiric decision that wasn't based on data. That rule had real consequences. Schools didn't open back up. Businesses didn't open back up. Churches didn't open back up. I could go on and on and on. And Americans were kept physically separated from one another during the most difficult moments of their lives. Many lost loved ones during that time. So, Dr. Fauci, did you have any evidence to support a 6-foot separation rule when you gave that advice to Americans?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
All right, well, let's look at the lockdowns then. By 2022, the consequences of prolonged COVID lockdowns on our children were clear, from delayed development to social isolation, which is probably why you were asked in July 2022 whether you would recommend locking down schools again. And you said, first of all, I didn't recommend locking anything down. But now we have your diary, and it tells a very different story from the one you told the public. And I will quote, I spoke with Bill de Blasio, the mayor of NYC, and convinced him based on what I was saying publicly in my conversation tonight to close the NYC schools. He had already decided based on what I was saying on TV. I went on to tell him he should close the bars and restaurants in NYC, and he said he would do this based on my recommendation. You even said that you told the president we should shut the whole country down. So, Dr. Fauci, how do you square telling the American people publicly that you didn't recommend locking anything down with your own diary entry kept on federal government equipment, saying that your recommendation is what convinced the mayor and the president to lock things down?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Now, I just want to make clear that when in Florida, we were pleading with people to give us advice based on scientific evidence.
Oh,
we were getting these conflicting statements by you that didn't match
Brian?
scientific data.
No,
in fact,
no man pond stalked in the bathroom this morning.
The grand jury's conclusion, not surprising.
No man ponds in Minnesota's
The
bathrooms.
only state to have impaneled a grand jury. I was the only attorney general to do this. We did this in 2023. That conclusion was the law.
Yeah, why is there no
Distancing advice administered by federal agencies and implemented by certain local, state, and federal agencies was not
Donald Trump got us into the war so there wouldn't be an election?
data. In fact, many recommendations and their accompanying mandates departed significantly from available research. Again, people from all walks of life, all political persuasions, that is what they found. And yet, during that time, while you were giving those statements, knowing there was no scientific basis for it, and we know now you knew it because we have your diary entries, you called the governor that I worked with to fight to keep Washington and D.C. out of our state so that we could indeed respect the rights of our citizens. You called our governor, Governor DeSantis, and I'm going to quote this so I get it right out of your journals, a total jerk, that he is a complete disgrace, that he is blocking local authorities from mandating masks in various locations, including schools. And you were very concerned and upset that we were actively, and I'm going to quote, criticizing you.
What happened to Brian Clark?
Virtually every day about being wrong on everything. And what is astounding is that you wrote you feared because of that, because we were questioning our government, because we were fighting back for the truth from our government, from scientifically based recommendations, because we were pushing for that. You said you feared that our democracy is in dire danger. Thank goodness we have people up here that I work with that understand our role, which is to report to our bosses, the people, because they are in charge. Calling for our government to be honest with us and transparent with us and accountable to us, that is a democracy. What you did is the opposite. And I cannot believe I have to explain this to someone who represented our government and some of the most important issues for so long. And before I conclude, if I can just put up our pardon. This is the pardon you have heard so much about. And Dr. Fauci, the only other person that got a pardon like this.
Yeah, subscriber mode is on.
Last name of Biden. This pardon goes back to, and if you'll see.
I think he was he was arguing with Jeffrey.
Did you talk to President Biden and ask for this pardon?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the
Brian was just chilling in the chat for a while, and then he just
White House about this pardon.
He just changed. He just
On the advice of
turned
counsel,
over for a minute.
I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did you specifically ask that it be dated back to the beginning of 2014?
On the advice of
I'm looking at his messages, and I'm like, what?
answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did you do that so that you would be given immunity going back to the beginning of 2014?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth.
Maybe he misread Jeffrey's message or something.
Why it was this date? Did it have anything to do with the fact that 2014?
I want to unblock Brian, but
that the NIAID
I think he misread Jeffrey's message.
alliances understanding the risk of bat coronavirus emergence grant?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
And this is the same grant that funded the work on bat coronaviruses at the Wuhan Institute on Virology. Millions of Americans are questioning what happened during COVID, why we were given misleading information, misleading advice, why you gave conflicting statements based on, I guess, how you were feeling that day. And Americans, rightfully, we lost over 1 million Americans.
Brian, like,
They should be insulted when the Democrats.
Jeffrey's not a liberal. You're not understanding what he said.
Obsessive mission to go after one man. Could his obsessive mission be to find out why 1 million Americans died and who might be responsible for that and where that started? Could that be his mission, Dr. Fauci?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
And after everything we have just walked through, can you sit here today and tell the American people, our bosses, that you bear no responsibility for their collapse in trust of their government?
Based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Time has expired. We're going to do another quick round for those who remain, about 5 minutes. Any questions that haven't come up that are pressing? Let's try not to go over territory that's already been done. I'll begin by asking unanimous consent to insert into the record documents show that the CIA.
All right, Brian, come on, man, you got to go.
AID through interagency agreement. Hearing no objection, so ordered.
I don't know what happened to you today, buddy, but
Today we haven't, but I think it's important that we do hear from him. So we will have a video we'll play in a moment. For years,
whatever. I don't know what happened to him. He misread, misinterpreted comments.
Came from nature.
Now he's telling Hook to lick sack.
It's a marketplace. It's a marketplace. He's been saying that.
Lick sack, buddy.
Recently. But what we find is that what he was saying in public is different than what he was saying in private. In January, in private, he wrote that looks like the wet market was a super spreader event. It didn't originate there. We know that some of the earliest deaths and sickness came from somewhere else. But then for years and years, we got dishonesty. So let's play the video so we can see a little juxtaposition of the problem we're dealing with.
All right. They said my shed should be done by Monday. As soon as the paint dries, they'll send me pictures of it. Oh, here we go. Now class is really in session.
Wild are being brought into wet markets. So there are animals that come out of the wild that are sold at these open, what they call them, wet markets. Wet markets. When you bring animals in from the wild who have these viruses, the wet markets in Asia where people bring animals from the forest into market, there are wet markets in Wuhan that are ample opportunity for a virus to jump from an animal. The origin was from a bat to an intermediate host to a human, very likely in a wet market, and those animals should not have been in the Wuhan market. They knew that those animals should not have been in the market, and they immediately cleaned out the market, put restrictions on the kinds of animals that come into these wet markets. I think I should shut down those things right away. I mean, it boggles my mind.
So repeatedly saying in public something different than what he believed in private. Now this is interesting because, the first SARS outbreak in 2003 was traced to a wet market, to animals there. But interestingly, they had evidence. They had evidence that the animals had the disease. They also had evidence that the handlers had a disproportionately high number of antibodies to the disease.
Gonna have to wait to see.
Evidence, and the evidence was presented.
I might do a live stream. I might put my phone up there, just live stream as they're dropping it off.
They looked at the wet market and tested, I think, 80,000 animals. Didn't find any animals that had COVID-19. When they did find COVID-19 in trace samples there, they found that the DNA or the RNA was consistent with human spread. This was known not later on, didn't take years to develop, was known in January of 2020. And so Dr. Fauci says privately he knows it didn't come from the wet market, but as you saw, those were over a multi-year period. One of the other discussions I've had with Dr. Fauci over the years about natural immunity. So most infections, you get a degree of immunity, not perfect, some fairly perfect. Smallpox, you just don't get again. George Washington knew this. He had his wife get vaccinated, but he didn't because he'd already had smallpox. But there's one particular story that a man came up to me who'd lost his wife to COVID. He said, we all got it. We all got sick, and my wife ended up getting sick enough to go to the hospital. But we'd recovered 2 weeks. She was still alive. 2 to 3 weeks later, we'd all recovered, and they wouldn't let us be with her. And to this day, it's one of the saddest things. And it just, I think all of us should think about this. They were not allowed to visit their mom. He wasn't allowed to visit his wife in the hospital. But based on this misunderstanding of natural immunity, that for some reason 2 weeks later they were a problem. But this was all promulgated by you. We had the workers in the meat factories. They were essential. They had to keep working. Most of
I had COVID, and I was vaccinated with the 2 boosters.
Insurance should have come from public health.
I had COVID. My wife had COVID. My son got COVID. We had to take him to the hospital.
It also should be acknowledged. What's the number one thing we can do if we get another pandemic? Before we have a vaccine,
he had it for 1 day and then got over it. The next day he was back to zipping around the apartment. But
others in New York,
that 1 day he was sick,
hundreds of thousands of people.
He was not moving. He was just sitting.
You could have been
sitting with me and not moving all day.
The elderly should be people who are 2 weeks out from COVID infection. We could have used natural immunity as somewhat of a block of protection. Imperfect, but the only protection we had and the only thing we could have done. Instead, the nursing homes were seated with people who had COVID. So I think the discussion of natural immunity is one where there wasn't sufficient honesty, humility, there wasn't enough presentation to encourage people. That was the only encouraging thing we had for a while is you've got it. You're very, very, if not impossible, close to impossible chance that you'll die if you get it again. Everybody could have been reassured. Nobody was reassured. It's like, well, we don't know. We just don't quite understand natural immunity. My favorite quote from that is from Martin Kulldorff from Harvard. You called him one of the people that you had to take down, the fringe epidemiologist, which I've never, ever heard a scientist call another scientist that. But he jokingly said on Twitter, he said, yeah, we knew about natural immunity from 486 BC.
Someone said security is trying to get Fauci out quickly as soon as the meeting ends
2020.
So that media can't ask him any questions.
Slowly coming back, 24 to 2025, we're beginning to understand what natural immunity is again.
They're just going to
perfect, but
whisk him out of there real quick.
Also something that could have helped people by telling the public, my goodness, you're not going to die now. You have a chance. If you've already had it and you're 85 years old and you're at risk for it, and you're wanting to feed your wife, and they're telling you to wear 4 masks and not be around your wife when you've already had it, it made no sense. I visited with a man whose mom was 83 and she was dying from COVID. They go to the hospital in Orange County. They won't admit her to the hospital till she's vaccinated because we have a policy that everybody in the hospital must be vaccinated. She's got COVID and they wanted to vaccinate her again. At one point in time, the CDC understood this. They told people, don't get vaccinated if you've had COVID within 3 months. Why? Because it may give you a heightened immune response when you've already got a heightened immune response. But giving a person very sick, and many of the people who died from COVID died from sort of this storm of response, this immune storm. The answer wouldn't be try to stir up their immune response more by giving them a vaccine. The answer was actually steroids, and good old-fashioned steroids, 37% reduction in death. It turned out to be way more valuable than remdesivir, way more valuable than any of the other treatments, but I don't remember ever hearing a complimentary word on natural immunity or steroids or anything else. And, I wish we could have done more today. I would have been willing to accept an apology today. I'm sorry I made mistakes. We all made mistakes. And, at the time, I thought the gain of function research was, the risks of it were worth the benefits. But I've reassessed since 15 million people died. People say, well, gosh, these things never happen. We know it happened in 1977. We know with 100% certainty a virus escaped. In 1977, there's something called the Russian flu. Nobody's exactly positive how it got out. But when they sequenced it, they found out that a flu in 1977 had exactly the same RNA as a 1954 one that they had in the lab and they had created a vaccine for. In fact, turns out anybody born before 1954 was immune, and the only people who got it were people who were born between 1954 and 1977. But it was identical. The genetic sequence was identical to this vaccine or the virus from 1954, and that doesn't happen because these respiratory viruses are always mutating. To be identical means it had to have leaked from the lab, proof positive that it had. So we know this happens. An author by the name of Young wrote a book and said there was 1,200 cases of significant accidents that have occurred.
I'm gonna need a nap after this.
Yet it was completely discounted because I think you were worried that if it was seen that you funded dangerous research that started the pandemic, you'd get blamed. And it was a concerted effort. It wasn't just you. Anybody associated with the funding decided we needed to protect ourselves. Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned that we lost knowledge of natural immunity. I didn't. Dr. Fauci did. I suppose I had an asymptomatic case of COVID because of the very faulty PCR test. I never got vaccinated or injected. There's no way I would have done that because I found out enough about the mRNA gene therapy. But you also brought up the issue of hospital protocols. I'm going to be holding a public
Patriot RV Live. Good to see you.
We've already received a couple of hundred testimonies. They are heart-wrenching. They are heart-wrenching. Here's an excerpt from the testimony of a staff surgeon, very experienced, doctor for decades, at Providence Regional Medical Center, Everett, Washington. Quote, after our hospital was given remdesivir by the CDC, we were provided misleading/inaccurate information about the drug biomedical leadership. When I had a young trauma patient who was a perfect candidate for remdesivir, the infectious disease doctor on call told me to not give it to her because, quote, she seemed like a nice girl. He concludes it was known early the remdesivir kills. As I said, nurses referred to it as run, death is near. So again, I've always been, because it never made sense to me that we put all of our eggs in the experimental gene therapy. If you knew anything about it, you would have avoided it like a plague. And we sabotaged early treatment. But the only treatment we really approved, monoclonal antibodies, which I think basically worked pretty well, but those weren't particularly available. They were denied an awful lot of patients. It was all remdesivir. Based on a study that the NIH changed the endpoint from mortality, because it had no impact on mortality, to days of recovery. A drug that the WHO recommended against its use in COVID in November of 2020, but a drug that cost over $3,000 for a course of treatment, versus things like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, who even Dr. Fauci, I should have got that one out because I want to take this time to enter things in the record, said that, we need to have a very tight protocol on remdesivir because it's unknown, but hydroxychloroquine, that's approved, some side effects, but we have a long history of it. Let's put up my latest chart. Again, I was tracking adverse events on the experimental injection, but I use this chart as a comparison. So you've got ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine. These are average, again, AVAIRS doesn't improve causation, but there's correlation. It's there for safety signals. So ivermectin, over 30 years of FDA reports, 17 deaths per year. Hydroxychloroquine, over 38 years of reporting, 142 deaths per year. Remdesivir, over 5.5 years, 546 deaths per year. The COVID injection, almost 7,000 deaths per year. Which is safest? What did the FDA freak us out about ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, when they turned a complete blind's eye toward the injection's injury? So I want to enter the quote from the surgeon. By the way, here's the answer. Cheryl Atkinson in an interview said that when it comes to money, we check financial ties among experts on the government panel devising coronavirus treatment guidelines, which had the effect of dialing back hydroxychloroquine use and giving an edge to remdesivir. We found the 11 members reporting links to a drug company, 9 of them named relationships to remdesivir's maker, Gilead. 7 more, including 2 of the committee leaders, have ties to Gilead beyond the 11 months they had to disclose. 2 were on Gilead's advisory board. Others were paid consultants or received research support and honoraria. By the way, within the study, I think one of the study participants was an employee of Gilead. A bunch also had conflicts with Gilead. So, I wonder why. There are conflicts of interest. Gilead made billions of dollars off of remdesivir and people died. In terms of ignoring safety signals, you can probably put that down now. This has come to light. This is Dr. Drew Weissman, who got the Nobel Prize for the mRNA platform. He wrote to Dr. Fauci, on February 8th of 2020. Tony, I wanted to alert you to some new data we generated with our mRNA LNP vaccine. Now, it was a higher fold dose, but that mRNA LNP go to the placenta and fetus, measured by translation of the mRNA and cause of immune response in the amniotic fluid. So that same day, Dr. Fauci responds, it'd be interesting to see what human dose levels given intramuscular do. So about a month later, Dr. Weissman replies, he said, we still have some concerns over the data after they tested it at IM. Now, again, there's more documentation in terms of the FDA blew it off. It's like, don't worry about that. That was the whole thing. That's what Peter Marks did when he was shown that his algorithm was going to mask safety signals. The last thing I want to enter in the record here is, and I want to make the point, why is this important? That they buried the treatment of severely injection injured. The fact that we haven't acknowledged these injection injuries, these people can't get treatment. They're being gaslit by their doctors. So it's all in your head.
I was actually falling asleep for a second.
Injection injured of suicides is increasing because they've given up hope, because our medical establishment and federal health agencies completely failed them, failing to acknowledge it. So again, Dr. Nath was diagnosing and treating injection injured in March of 2021. This concerned people. So you had Dr. Walter Koroshitz, writes Dr. Fauci. One of the points he made, there's been a steady, slow stream of reports to me of post-vaccination neurological conditions. Dr. Nath has been collecting a bunch. He has reports sent out to publish. Well, that alarmed everybody. Boy, you can't let the public know what's actually happening. You can't actually let the public know what the science is showing. So on April 29th, a email from Francis Collins, head of NIH, to Dr. Koroshitz, says, I find this approach troubling and will have the main consequence of feeding vaccine hesitancy and social media overreaction. Then Dr. Lawrence Tabak writes to Francis Collins, I don't understand why Walter does not shut this thing down. Why don't you shut down Dr. Nath, who's actually injection injured? Why? Because of vaccine hesitancy. And because we haven't acknowledged that, and the reason I've been advocating for this is because I know the injection injured. I know people who lost loved ones within days of the injection. And we've turned our backs on them. They deserve acknowledgement. They deserve to be heard, seen, and believed so they can get treatment. I also know the doctors whose careers were destroyed because you denigrated things like ivermectin and denied ivermectin to people in hospitals who got their kidneys knocked out by the remdesivir but got put on ventilators, never got to hug their loved ones goodbye because of those hospital protocols. That's what your science did to people. So, Dr. Fauci, my only question is, based on your lack of testimony here today, based quite honestly on our investigation into the cover-up of safety signals and injection injuries, we have issued letters to a number of former FDA officials to come in for transcribed interviews. You will be getting a letter today asking for a volunteer transcribed interview. So I'd be asking, will you comply or will I have to subpoena you?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Expect a subpoena. Thank you.
Expect a subpoena. A subpenis.
Did you personally receive any royalty payments connected to COVID-related intellectual property?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Given that NIH receives
I'm like that chick over there. I'm just ready to go to
why
sleep.
would any American believe these financial ties did not influence decisions about which treatments were promoted or restricted?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Why doesn't NIAID publicly disclose these payments?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Be right back.
Did you partner with Bill Gates on global health initiatives or vaccines?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
How much did Bill Gates entities provide in funding to NIAID collectively since 2005?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
To your knowledge, did Bill Gates partner with China on sensitive research?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Specifically, dual-use research such as countermeasures or gain of function?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Do you know if Bill Gates entities partnered with U.S. government classified programs?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Do you know if Bill Gates maintains an active national security clearance?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did you advocate or request for Bill Gates to receive a security clearance?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Do you have any knowledge that NIAID or NIH through HHS sponsored or requested a security clearance for Bill Gates?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Around 2010, my understanding is that the government shifted its approach to biodefense countermeasure research. Did NIAID, under your leadership, partner with the Obama White House or any other U.S. government classified entities on sensitive countermeasures research?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did your office take steps to drive biological research investments?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What was private industry's take on the type of research in the 2010 timeframe and before?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Was it considered too dangerous to conduct and industry was hesitant to take this on and invest in?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Why did you take steps to mature the government's approach to biodefense?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Were there any specific lines of effort or actions you felt were needed during this time to improve the research development and fielding model?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
How was dual use and gain of function incorporated or accounted for in maturing biodefense countermeasures?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did you ever discuss moving gain of function countermeasures research out of government space to private industry space?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
How were these private organizations regulated through government oversight while conducting risky research, including gain of function or gene editing technology?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did the Obama White House or any government entities take steps to inject funding into private industry?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
How do you ensure that our national security and public health is protected when private organizations work with foreign countries of concern and have the no government oversight, such as the EcoHealth Alliance research grant you funded in a CCP military lab?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Given the culture of the pay to play at NIAID, did you or anyone acting on your behalf make any payment or enter any arrangement in any way or fashion to secure influence the broad pardon you received from President Biden?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'd like to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter from the Department of Energy that confirms during Anthony Fauci's tenure that Bill Gates was given Q security clearance from 2014 to 2021. Without objection, that will be entered into the record. I'd also ask unanimous consent to enter into the
Getting my weed eater set up.
Of the folder of authorities provided to Dr. Fauci, including the pardon. Let's be clear today, what we've seen. I really did want to hear from Dr. Fauci. I wanted to hear perhaps an apology, perhaps
didn't we all?
Semblance of being sorry for what happened or that judgment errors were made. We didn't hear any of that.
That's right. I'm getting my whacker ready.
Testify, refused to answer any questions, even after being directed by the chair and being advised of the law requiring him to do so. He has cited a privilege that is unsupported because of his blanket pardon and because he waived the privilege by testifying at the start. I'm going to give you one more opportunity to comply with the law, limited to the period of your pardon. At any point between January 1st, 2014 and January 19th, 2025, did you destroy any federal record or tell anyone else to?
Under the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Given that you have a unlimited presidential pardon, what is your specific objection that you are making?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
My question was limited to the period of your pardon only. I find your objection unsupported and direct you to answer the question.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Because you refused to answer, citing a privilege that is unsupported because of your pardon, and after being denied to do so, this committee has scheduled a vote next week on a resolution certifying your contempt. We have another question or two from Senator Langford.
Why couldn't they do that from the very beginning? Just
Really,
hold his ass in contempt.
For you, and it's a question to try to figure out how do we get a good...
Gary, thank you for the sunshine.
Because clearly Dr. Fauci's attorneys are saying that he has a Fifth Amendment right. We've also subpoenaed him to be able to compel his testimony to be able to be here. I happen to be in the committee. We were also dealing with Lois Lerner. Lois Lerner came and testified, gave an opening statement, and then took the Fifth Amendment. The committee then held her in contempt for that, saying you can't do both. You can't both testify and say I'm not going to answer questions. So the parliamentary question that I think we've got to be able to deal with is this consistent with Lois Lerner? What she also did when she came before Congress, gave an opening statement, testimony, so made a statement, and then refused to answer questions. Are we dealing with the same issue here where someone is you can't make a statement and say I'm not going to make statements at the same time?
I think it's a very good question. I think that's something all of us will examine over the next week. We're going to have a vote.
Yeah, give him the contemptulitis.
I think there's another legal question that the courts may have to
ain't no vaccine for that motherfucker.
Decide upon, and that is whether or not a presidential pardon that offers you complete immunity, that you can still claim that you need
I'm sorry, y'all.
from immunity when you've been protected. Because Dr. Fauci isn't liable for anything as long as he tells the truth, even if he admits that he destroyed records on a routine basis. His assistant said she destroyed a ton of emails. I think it was a routine thing. I think he destroyed throughout his career there are probably thousands of emails. Even if he did that, as long as he answered truthfully, yes, I did. I didn't think that was important. I made a mistake. You can't be prosecuted for it. Many of the things are outside the statute of limitations as well. All he had to do today if he wanted to testify was be honest. As long as he was honest, even about committing a crime, he would have no jeopardy. But I think the pardon has given him more immunity than most people would ever get. Like if you offer a witness immunity in exchange for testimony, he has blanket immunity. The president gave him blanket immunity for virtually anything he could have possibly done, while at NIH. So I think we all have to individually answer this question. We welcome you to be part of helping us figure out the question, but there will be a vote, at least right now, there will be planned to be a vote next week on contempt.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Today will be the capstone to Anthony Fauci's 40 years of abuse of power at NIH. In the end, must imagine Fauci believes he got away with it. But still, late at night, even the guilty must become anxious, rerunning the scenarios through his mind, wondering, latching on to lingering doubts, and worrying. Did his actions lead to the largest man-made plague in human history? Are the millions dead the result of his experiments or experiments that he approved that increased the pathogenicity of deadly viruses? History will judge, but the facts, as we now know them, paint a sordid tale of dishonesty, misjudgment, and ultimately the hubris, the likes of which the world has rarely seen. If everyone will remain seated for a few minutes, we're going to let Dr. Fauci exit. Thank you.
And there he goes.
think that auto pen scribbles in the...
Dr. Fauci, how do you think leadership will judge your, how do you think history will judge your leadership?
There goes the plague doctor.
Why did you invoke the Fifth Amendment today, sir?
This weed eater's an upgrade from my old one. They've changed a little bit about it. Looks a little more updated. Well, that was a colossal waste of time, but I mean, a lot of information was released. Does it change anybody's opinion? You think anybody on the left that or any of these Fauci supporters are now like, you know, think they care about this? This is just Trump trying to commit lawfare, you know. Shit. I'm in the middle of putting my weed whacker together. But anyways, let me get back to actually working over here on the clock. Well, I guess that's it. So big shout out to that. Boy, it's so bright in here with the window open. It's what is it? 97 degrees outside. Well, right now it's 87. I'm gonna get out there before it gets too hot. But you already know what it is. We're gonna be live tonight. All right. And if you missed like the first topics I talked about at the very beginning, you can either rewind, go all the way back, or just wait for the videos to drop. They'll drop either later today or tomorrow or something like that. But that's gonna do it for today, man. I hope y'all I don't know, had a good time. At least I hope I entertained y'all, even though that was the most boring committee hearing we've ever had to endure. So at least I hope it was a little entertaining. All right. But we're gonna be back later tonight. Thank you all for the supports, the super chats. Wounds are us. Thank you for the hefty super chats over on Rumble. You know, I appreciate you. And we're gonna be back tonight. Hopefully another police chase unfolds. That'd be pretty entertaining. So I love you guys. I appreciate y'all, man. I'm gonna see you guys bright and early tomorrow for the MAGA morning show. And I will see you guys later tonight for the Daily Discourse. All right. Love you guys. I'll see y'all later.
Somebody once asked Donald Trump, how do you handle being at the center of all of this media attention, the whirlwind around you? How do you weather the storm? And he looked up and he said, I am the storm. I am the storm.